Christina's going to be a little late, so we can use Mark's standing, and we can all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, Con Edison, since you're the only ones in the audience right now. We're actually going to lead off. It's not on the agenda, but Con Edison's going to be in to talk about a project you started, I guess was it 6 months ago, 9 months ago?
Yeah, we came in and had discussions probably that long.
About storm hardening, kind of a key area, actually right where we're sitting now, kind of the area around Village Hall, includes the police department, the fire department, IVAC, the Main Street School Gymnasium, which would be used as a shelter. And now you're back. I think Mark and Tommy actually,
and Larry
met with you guys when you were originally in. Asked if we could look at a less visually impactful version. I think you've looked at it, and it's very difficult to do that. And now you're back to kind of get us up to speed about where you are, and figure out if we want to move forward.
Right.
So, I think that's what it is.
Okay, so just so, I'm Jane Solnick, I'm Director of Public Affairs for Con Edison. Westchester's focus specifically. Orlando Alves works with me in Public Affairs, and Carlos Murillo is engineer for Con Edison, who has been looking at the project. Just to step back for a minute. Sure.
Sure. These are here on TV.
They have to take turns with people, okay? So, do you need me to go back? Or
You can pass the mic if you like, but otherwise I can't pick you, it won't pick up.
do I have to introduce us again, or? It's up to you. Yeah, not a problem. I'm Jane Solnick. I'm with Con Edison's Public Affairs, specifically focused on Westchester. I'm here today with Orlando Alves, also from Public Affairs, and Carlos Murillo, who is an engineer with Con Edison, who has been looking at this project. I just want to step back for a minute and explain why we even looked at the project. After Superstorm Sandy, and everyone is aware of the devastation that happened at that point, we as a company took a step back and said we have to look more seriously in supporting the municipalities in the event that we should have a catastrophic issue. And so each municipality operating on their own needs to function. So we went to each municipality. First we went and requested approval for funding to do what we refer to as storm hardening. Storm hardening being that we wanted to go to each municipality and strengthen the services that are to the critical infrastructure within that municipality. So we took the time, we got the approval. It's a limited time, a 3-year funding, that we got special funding to go after the municipalities and strengthen their critical facilities. We went to every municipality and said, okay, if you had your wish list, you know, we have a limited funds, but if you had your wish list, what is it that you would want to be up and operational first in your community if you were devastated? So in talking to the Village of Irvington, and interesting enough, you guys, more so than a lot of the municipalities, have a lot of your critical infrastructure tight here, pretty close together, being what Brian was pointed out, your firehouse, your police station, your village hall, facility that you could use as a shelter. So we went back from that standpoint, and Carlos and his team looked at what we could do to strengthen so that you would get services back, in reality, back before the rest of your community so that you could service your community. In doing so, we came up with a plan. We brought that plan here. There were questions about, and we understand that you have concerns about the aesthetics. It's a great town, as I can attest to, having been raised here. It's a beautiful town, and to your concerns of the aesthetics of the overhead wires and, you know, the hopes that it could go underground. Unfortunately, the cost of going underground is prohibitive. But at the same time, I have to point out a couple of things to you. What we want to do to strengthen you and give services to this tight area here of your critical infrastructure, we could do a piece of that underground. If we did that, you would not lose any of your poles that are along Main Street. The reason being that you would not lose any of your poles along Main Street is because it also services all your side streets, all your extensions. The other piece of why we wanted to do some strengthening, storm hardening here, is because we want to isolate you if there's devastation from Lower Main Street and all of that goes down around the river, because if something happens down there, it impacts you here and takes you out. So we kind of want to cut you off from that so that you could be brought back up before maybe we can get all the rest of that work done, so that you would be able to be operational. We did look at going underground for you. As I said, so our biggest interest is bringing service to you from up at the substation that's kind of towards the top of Main Street, if you're familiar with it. You know, what we would be doing is, if we did that, we would come tear up your Main Street down to Village Hall. But as I pointed out, you won't lose the poles or anything like that. You would lose two transformers, I will tell you that. 2 transformers would come off of, 2 different poles, one on each, but the rest would not. It would still be there. And I have to tell you, it's financially an outrageous number for us for that little bit of undergrounding. It does not make sense to the ratepayers and for us as a company to invest that kind of money. So Carlos did look at options for you for other things. That's the reality. The other thing I want to point out, I know there's concern about the size of the poles that we want to put in, because the poles will be taller than the current ones. And I understand the concern about that. I want to point out to you, if for some reason, say a car accident hits a pole or a tree takes a pole down, current poles that are along your Main Street, the new standard is when that pole is replaced, it will be replaced with the larger pole anyway. So I want to make that clear to you too. It's not making that new pole size go away, because that has become the standard in the industry at this point for that. And so we're here to answer any questions we can for you, but I do have to point out that we are in the last year of that 3-year funding. So I'm here to urge you to make a decision quickly, because if you don't want it, which you have every right to tell us that, we want to know quickly, because we're going to take the funds and go and strengthen somewhere else. So I have to point that out to you, and this is a limited fund, so you can't, next year, we're not going to be able to do it for you. But it's kind of, we're at the deadline at this point. So the 3 of us are here. If we can answer anything for you, we'd be happy to.
Do you have any mock-ups of kind of what the new overheads would look like?
Want to see it?
Sure.
So I have kind of Google Street View 3D pictures of the wish. So as you know, this is the Village Hall. The new poles that we're going to install are one across the street, diagonally across the street. That's the new pole. And we will replace this pole and the pole with the transformer on it, and also the corner pole. Alongside that, we will also have
So
to...
wait, let's go back again, Carlos, if you could. This pole would be new, the one right at Ferris Street
Taller.
would be taller.
Yes.
There'd be a transformer added,
No, removed.
removed,
Yes.
and there'd be more wires coming across the view shed of Main Street than there are now.
There would be 2 spans right here added. Those are the only 2 extra wires that we would have to add.
So
two-
across
two-
Main Street, I'm not the engineer, so he can correct me, but across Main Street, that goes actually across, what's there will go away, and you will get new. They will be thicker wires. I want to be clear on that. I don't want anybody to be surprised by anything they think. So that's part of the, for strengthening purposes.
Do you have an actual plot plan that shows location on the sidewalks themselves rather than a projection? Because part of the problem last time we were out there is that at least 1 or 2 of the poles were in totally unacceptable positions. And I don't see how this changes at the corner. southwest corner of Main Street at Ferris, right, the southwest corner.
Okay. There's,
The way it was going to be positioned was that post was going to be placed right at the, because it has, you got to leave the other pole up when you put the new one in, it's going to be placed right in the middle of the, where people would normally be crossing both crosswalks. At least that was
That's
what
what
was
you
marked
showed
on.
us when we were there. You had it marked on the sidewalk. Is that still what you're suggesting?
well, there's two types of ways we can do this. We can place a pole next to it, or we can do what we call a cut and kick, which is we can place it in the same hole that it's currently in. So there's two ways to do it.
Well, we told you when we were here last time that the way marked on the pavement was not going to be acceptable to anyone. So I don't understand why you're coming back, I'm sorry, and even suggesting it, because it was very clear we didn't want the pole in that location. So if there's a way to use the existing location for a pole, that would solve that problem right there.
Or are you talking about this new pole, or we're talking
I
about?
meant the one
Yeah,
on
so
the
it's-
southwest corner of Ferris Street.
Okay. Yeah, well, we can use the same hole.
Well, that's not how it was presented or how it was marked on the pavement.
Marked on, I'm not too.
The sidewalk was marked with a circle where the new pole would go.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. No, that's just a markup of our survey group. They'll come out and they'll theoretically put it on the floor where it would go just to get like a bearing.
Well, we're going to have exact plans to approve because
Okay.
everyone else thinks the pole's going there. You're not even sure where it's going to go.
Well,
So it's, I couldn't sign off on anything unless I knew exactly where this stuff is going to go.
I wasn't going into specifics. We can bring field tech.
Well, anyone that does anything to our planning board has to come with specifics and show exactly what they're doing. I think that you have to show us exactly where the locations of these poles are going to be.
Of course.
And we can do that. We can absolutely do that.
But here's my bigger concern.
Right, that's just my
this is-
concern.
I know, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're thinking about Irvington. I'm trying to listen carefully, but I am so concerned about placing yet another pole right here in front of what is it's yet another new restaurant that's going here. That this isn't going away is a problem. That there are fatter wires coming across the middle of Main Street. We're trying to create a vibrant business district. It's not, I know you said aesthetics.
No.
It's way more than aesthetics.
Oh,
It's
and I-
about business, it's about pedestrian safety right there. There's a lot of very big issues that we spent, 5 years or so talking about. And I just felt that Con Edison, with all your resources and all your smart people and all your thinking, would be able to come up with a plan that would be acceptable to me, to Mark. I mean, I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I'm so disappointed that there isn't a better plan that really meets our needs. And, I think it's very important that we have redundancy, and that's admirable of you to be thinking of us. But I'm just, and, we're also working on a long-term microgrid project. I mean, I don't know if you've had any good connection with them, but that's a dynamic project.
This
And
doesn't get us
I'm
closer
not,
there,
I'm
Mrs.
just
Young.
not convinced
Excuse
that,
me?
This doesn't get us closer there exactly. If we're starting to, yes, in some ways it does, but Connie's comment about the problem, our long-term goal is to ultimately, whether or not it's a dream or not, it would be nice to have the kind of viable downtown that other communities in the area have been able to generate by removing their lines. So whether or not we get there, that's a whole different thing, but sticking more stuff up is going in the absolutely wrong direction. I guess the question I keep thinking is, you're talking about there's a cost to bring the wiring underground from the substation down to wherever I guess there'd have to be an underground transformer somewhere down here installed. But then you said that still wouldn't remove any of the existing poles, but that was never an issue.
I didn't ask that.
We didn't ask for poles to be.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that everybody was clear on it, that's all. I was just trying to
What's the
clarify.
cost of doing it in a way that doesn't add any above-ground infrastructure?
So for us to come down from the substation down here to Village Hall in this area, the cost would be $2 million.
I have a different question, if I could. I understand the aesthetic concerns, and I'm very sensitive to that, and I also understand what you're saying about prohibitive cost factors. What level of risk are we talking about? You said it was post-Sandy that you wanted to be able to strengthen, harden the I forget your phrase, I'm sorry, but to...
Storm harden is a phrase.
I knew harden was in there somewhere.
Yeah.
To storm harden. So how, what kind of a risk is it?
So the reality is, I don't think anyone in this room, nobody expected us to ever get hit by Superstorm Sandy to the extent that we were. So we have been, from the Public Service Commission, who we are regulated by, to looking to the future that we don't know what we could be confronted with. And now we have to put things in place. So I can't tell you what risk we're at. It would depend on what we got hit with.
It's really a question of failure analysis. What is the failures that would bring down power to this area? And I'll say it specifically because during Superstorm Sandy and other storms that have occurred with outages, strips of Main Street, this facility has had power, and everywhere else in the village hasn't had it. So I'm wondering if there's any analysis that's actually been done about what the risks are vis-a-vis this facility, the facilities we're talking about in the adjacent area. And the example of Sandy doesn't necessarily pan out because this area had power.
Well, I guess I just want to step back. That's why we're here, because we want an ultimate decision from you if you don't want it, because we're going to move on. And I understand that you might not have experienced it. Let me just give you another example, because I can't tell you if you'll get hit by an event or not. After Superstorm Sandy happened, and everybody's just recovered and stuff, it was beautiful, blue sky day. Well, all of a sudden I'm getting panic calls from Ardsley, and it was Ardsley and in a piece of Greenberg. And some kind of funnel thing came through, and it was you would never, I was like, what are people talking about? There were so many people in that path that were out, and poles were down and trees were down. The rest of Westchester County was totally fine. Totally. So I can't tell
If
you.
you put a second set of lines up here, they're exposed to the weather. The only thing that you can really do to minimize risk is to put it underground. And that's why it seems like there's inconsistency in the argument that you're trying to minimize risk. Minimizing risk, put it underground. That is the minimum risk to any kinds of storm damage.
Maybe I should clarify. I'm not necessarily just trying to minimize risk here. What we're trying to do, and what has been planned out, is a way that if you were out, we could bring you back faster, that we
How
could
would that be
bring
faster
surrounding
if the
people.
lines are down on Main Street?
Because you have a substation at the top of
I said
Main
if the
Street.
lines are out on Main Street, how is this going to bring us back faster?
Because you can have more of a redundancy. There's other options for your services to come from.
If the lines are out on Main Street,
Excuse me?
There's different directions that can be fed.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry, I should have, yeah.
I
There was
understand that,
different
but we're not
directions.
showing that analysis to see where the risks are and we know. My discomfort is that we don't have any information to work on besides trust me. We don't have any risk analysis about what circuits have gone down in the last 10 years, what frequency of outages.
Oh, we
where
do. We do. We absolutely do.
But you came here without that analysis. I'm sorry, it really annoys me. You
But-
came here without any kind of plans that would be required for us to actually understand where things are going in and that kind of thing. So it's like, you're not treating us with, personally, it upsets me that you come in here and just decide that you can't treat us like mature decision-making adults by giving us the information we need.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We're trying to bring you the
upset about it,
information.
but
Maybe, can I, again, perhaps just ask a different kind of questions. I think you've explained quite clearly, we're talking about completely unpredictable risks.
Correct.
You are trying to learn from Sandy, which was devastating
Right.
and took out thousands of people for a very long time. You have come up with a plan that might enable you to bring this little section of Main Street back so we would have essential services and potentially shelter. In the completely unpredictable event that this might happen again in our lifetimes or not.
Right.
I got it so far.
Yep, you got
Now,
it.
what about, can you tell us about, you said the cost of putting some of these wires underground would be prohibitive, and I think you mentioned $2 million. What is the comparative cost of what you are proposing to do?
So this project would cost roughly $400,000.
Okay, so it's would be $1.6 million differential to put the wires underground, and that, I think you implied, graciously would get passed on to your ratepayers, because that's what you would have to do.
But it's
Well,
a grant.
It's a grant, actually, I
So
think
it is a
I
grant,
was, I was incorrect in
Right,
saying
so it
that,
wouldn't
it's
be
not,
that.
no, it's not. And that's why it's a grant within this time frame.
Okay.
So you could choose to do it that way, even though if it were a $2 million expenditure, it's kind of your decision to say, we don't want to spend that here.
But no, that's not but we're trying to service and strengthen in every municipality.
Right, so you
So the dollars have to be shared. It's not just in the village of
But
Irvington.
is there some other place you're going that you haven't gone yet to take? You said we got to make a presentation somewhere else or make the offer to another municipality if we don't want the money.
So we've gone to pretty much every municipality
Okay.
and have worked on things. We also, as a company, have worked on areas that say all of Westchester County is devastated, that would bring critical facilities in quadrants of the county so that if people in Irvington were devastated and lost everything, you don't have to get up to Mount Kisco to get to pick up water or medications or anything like that. I mean, and I understand your frustrations, but that's what we've been charged with trying to do. You know, I can't give you statistics. What they're telling us is we want you as a company to put in services of critical infrastructure in case. So that's what we've been charged with.
But I think what Connie was implying was if enough other communities say no, might you have the $2 million to put ours underground? Is that what you were trying to say?
Yes, in other words, if you
I
have a
see what you're
grant,
saying.
you
Oh, I
have
see what you're
this
saying.
amount of money.
I see what you're saying.
The
Yes, yes.
project in
I mean,
Irvington
I have to tell you, nobody has said no.
would be $2 million. Or there's yet a middle way, a third way that, you haven't, maybe you have. I know you've talked to Larry, you've talked to Greg, you have engineers. I guess the frustration is that, if this is such an important thing to do, and you're sensitive to the safety and the development of Irvington's Main Street as a business hub, we even have a grant to accentuate the theater entrance here, and we're working on a grant to improve the aqueduct crossing. This is the core of the village, and when you look at serving the public, I mean, it's a public utility, you're thinking, Con Edison, we're here to serve the public. Why isn't it worth $2 million to do it the way that will work? Your
But
needs will be
but
fulfilled and ours will
we're
be
not going to
fulfilled.
lose any polls if we do that. They
Yeah,
just
I
said
know.
that.
That's right.
Yeah, I
So
know.
it's not going to change
Oh, no,
the
it's not,
visual.
but it's not gonna make it worse.
Yeah,
It's
but
not
actually-
gonna add a thing here, and it's not gonna add a pole here,
Yeah,
and it is gonna get rid of the transformer.
And the other thing it does is actually
It starts the process.
it hardens the backup loop, for want of a better word, against
Way
aerial
hardens.
damage.
Yeah, it
Right
really,
now,
it
that's why
really
I was
hardens
asking
it.
about risk assessment, because you've got a certain number of circuits on Main Street. I don't know how many, I don't know if it's one or two. And you're going to be running this thing on the same poles coming
Yeah,
down
so
Main
it seems-
Street.
it
So
seems-
you don't have alternate route, single point. You've got a single point of failure that can take down both sets of feeds from that substation.
So
Unless
unfortunately,
I'm missing something.
unfortunately, since Irvington is in the fringe network, it's harder for you guys to have a redundancy with more than, there's one circuit running along Main Street to the water. And that's what it is. If we were in White Plains, of course, we have an intricate.
I know, but what I'm saying is, I'm not sure how this is, for many types of outages, which result in lines being pulled down, if you're using the same set of poles for the second
They all go
circuit,
down.
it's not redundant.
Well, so the thing is, right now you're fed off the open wire, which is the thin cable. We're gonna put you on the stronger wire with a steel messenger. So if a tree, this wire can actually be on the ground and still be.
Well, we don't have major trees on Main Street. We're talking about other kinds of outages. Now, the thing that were examples of that would be high windstorms, or you mentioned a funnel that came through. That kind of stuff, hardened wire is not gonna, it's gonna take the pull down no matter what.
That's what I'm saying. If, like Jane said, on the side streets, if those wires go down, it could have an adverse effect on the village hall and the firehouse. By putting you on this stronger cable, if a tree should go down somewhere else, we could liven up the cable up to the village hall and cut everybody else off. Because this wire could be live on the ground. We'll have site safety there just to make sure that nobody gets hurt. But everyone in this little nook here would have power.
But you could do that with the existing lines, right? You could put line switches in.
It'll take longer, that's the thing. And we're pressed for crews during an emergency. So in this case, all we have to do is come out here with a troubleshooter or a lineman, flip a couple of switches, somebody in the control center can press a button, and you guys will be back on. With the switches, these individual switches, we would have to have somebody go out and investigate, all right, this pole is good, and then give the orders to have somebody come out here, flip switches, and then.
Unless you put the switches in the same configuration and just cut all the lines south of Village Hall in an emergency, right? I mean, you could do that.
So cutting lines is not.
I'm using it
Okay.
in quotes.
Okay. I mean, what we try to do is put as much equipment that we can fast open and close, not, because you said cut lines,
I meant switches.
Okay, so that's what we're trying to add switches.
I understand that.
We're trying to add switches.
Yeah.
And that's part of the whole.
That's
plan.
part of the whole plan.
I
is adding
understand
more
that totally. I'm just saying that, there's multiple scenarios that we just talked about right now where the redundancy isn't redundancy. So I'm just wondering, that's why I came back to the risk. What is this giving to us exactly? I can see multiple scenarios where it gives us something, and I can see multiple scenarios that gives us nothing.
Well, I
Right?
think that's
And the only
that's
scenario
the
that
point.
gives you the,
That's why you asked the question.
Yeah,
That's
it's,
the point. We're
we don't
dealing
know.
with completely unknown and unpredictable.
except
However,
all the
if
kind
those
of
of us
aerial
who
stuff that might come through, like funnels or whatever else, tornadoes, or whatever, wouldn't necessarily take out underground facilities.
Well, but I think they've been pretty clear that that is not an option that's on the table. Nor is it likely to be an option that you're going to come back to us with. Having thought about it further, we're going to bury the wires just like you asked because of the relative cost balance factor. So this is what you're proposing. There is no, one would hope that if we put it in, we would always be able to complain about that drat ugly pole there. But if some devastating event did occur, we would be far better able to, because we're not going to have a streetscape if something of the level of Sandy hits here, right? So what you're proposing would at least give us some protection in the event of this completely unpredictable emergency. And that's what we're really talking about.
Correct.
However much we would like it to be more aesthetically
If you add the
pleasing.
word could potentially give us protection, then I can agree
Yeah,
with
it's
that.
potentially giving us protection. There's absolutely no guarantee. That's what I said. I hope if we did this, I hope we would be able to complain about the ugly pole for the rest of our lives because we'll never do any good at all. But if the entire lower Westchester goes out and we can get essential services back here because we said yes to this plan, we're going to feel pretty good about it. So this is, you buy your insurance policy or you don't.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, it reminds me of the tree cutting, and I know there was a lot of heat about tree
Yes,
cutting,
exactly.
but, I think during Sandy, I think we did pretty well. A lot of it was because there was so much tree cutting, and we could debate if it was too much or not enough, but, I think, so again, the differences are there'd be another pole. What are the heights of our current poles versus the new poles?
The poles that are there, that we would replace a 45 with a 50, another 45 with a 50, a 40 with a 55, a 45 with a 55. So it's like 5 to 10 feet taller.
And
One other I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I have one other question. There was a new pole put in front of my house, much taller than the existing pole. I got it. I understand. It was kind of cool to watch him do it with the corkscrew or whatever. But the old pole never came down, and it still got wires attached off it.
Okay, so let me just.
You may think that's funny. Some of us may not have used it.
You're not alone in the
Very
village.
frustrating.
You are not alone.
Verizon and Cablevision.
So we can, if we're the ones who've done it, we can move our wires. We cannot move anybody else's wires. So Verizon has to move their own wires. There is a system that the Public Service Commission now has put in place. It's called Engines. I don't know the exact, it's NJUS. I don't know what exactly, but what it is so that we come in, we put in a pole, and we move our wires. The next person on the pole has 30 days to come move their wires.
And
So-
if they don't,
That is, I was going to go on and
There's no
say,
penalties.
the problem is there's no penalties in place now.
I'm
So
sorry, there's no what?
penalties in place.
So there's
I
no
see.
coordination.
But my question is not about my, sorry,
But that's,
front lawn,
we
but
can't move those
but
other
what will that
lines.
happen here, is my question. I don't care about
You
my
know
front
what,
house.
you're absolutely right. We can push, and we can push Verizon. I don't know who else is on your polls that we would have to look at.
cable.
Probably cable. I don't know if the village has anything on the polls as well. But sometimes they have security or
But
fire
potentially,
wires, things like that.
potentially, and at least certainly for a while, we would have not a replacement pole, but an additional pole.
Yes, a double pole.
A double
Yes.
pole.
Well, how would that
And that
work?
might never resolve.
That's,
The one where we replaced it.
Yeah, how
The
would
one
that
on North
work with the
Ferris.
one on the southwest corner of North Ferris, if you had to?
good luck being a
Southwest corner
pedestrian
of-
standing
whatever.
there trying to get across
That
the
would've been-
street and you still can't, you can hardly see now. You try to look around the truck, look around the pole, now there's another pole, plus another one down.
No,
It's, if you're concerned about safety, in the village and the overall good of the village, which I think Con Edison should be, I don't want to give up the more expensive option. I don't know why Con Edison needs to take that more expensive option off the table. I think Mark makes an excellent point that that's real redundancy. If those are underground, you have done what you wanted to do. You have made a redundant system for the safety of the people in our village during an emergency. That's what you want to do. It's a price tag, it's double plus a little bit.
It's 5 times.
No, it's 5 times. It's 5 times.
It's 5 times as much. Do it why that isn't a doable thing in a company as big as Con Edison with the millions of customers you have and the grants you get. Are you
We
saying
have a
absolutely
defined
not?
grant.
You're not.
We have a defined grant, and we have to stretch the dollars as far as we can. That is the reality.
So you're standing here saying right now, there's no way that you would approve that other plan. Con Edison, supervisor above
I was
supervisor
going to say,
above
above
supervisor,
our, way
has
above our
already
head.
said, absolutely not, we're not spending $2 million on Irvington. Do I hear you right?
Yes, as Jane said, we went to a lot of munis, and we actually came up with plans that were preposterous to the higher-ups. They said, there's no way we're going to spend this amount of money. And we had to go back and actually decrease the amount of money it would cost by redesigning. In your case, we would have to redesign to then increase the price. So there's a lot of plans that were turned down already. I believe that any plan that's more than $500,000, $600,000,
There's no chance.
like voting against
How many of these systems are going into historic districts across the county?
I couldn't tell you that. I don't have that.
If most village halls are in historic centers.
We're not giving a historic district.
We're in a nationally recognized historic district. That might, if you weren't aware of that, that might change the.
No, and that was one of the things, our first plan was actually to trench alongside our substation, and because it's a historic house next to it, they said, you're probably not gonna get any permits to do this. So we
And then
are,
the Historical Society is
yeah,
next door.
yeah, so.
But if you're going behind all of those
To
buildings.
the side, actually, not behind, not where the church, but in the
You
driveway.
mean out the driveway?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you be able to trench in the driveway?
Well, it was just something that, when we first started looking at it, they said, you might have a problem getting a permit to trench. Because we have to trench there along the sidewalk.
But if that, the Historical Society needs to be asked if they would say no to that.
Right, but I think there's a bigger question here, but
That's
still
not the
go back to
reason.
the overall price tag of this project or the other one that you're suggesting. And we did, and Carlos and his team looked at other options as well. This, I guess fortunately or unfortunately for you, your critical infrastructure is smack in the middle of town.
Well, that's good and bad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly, that's what I
It's
said.
gonna be good for when
Fortunately
we
and
do the
unfortunately.
microgrid project, if we get the.
So that's great.
And not only is the cost, but it's the space. Space
Yeah,
to
you
put
got very
these,
tight.
you say you want to accentuate front and beautify the aqueduct, but in order for us to come in and underground, there's two types of ways. We have total underground, or we have these pad mounted equipment that we can put on a slab, which is 10 feet tall, and that would, 9 feet wide, that also would,
Wouldn't
you
fit
know,
in, right?
yeah.
Well, but how many of those do you have? I thought you only had one down here at Village Hall area at the end of the line. How many of these pad mounted so-and-sos do you have? Because you're not feeding anything until you get down to Village Hall and the fire department.
No, in order for us to give you a redundant service to the Village Hall and all the surrounding buildings, we would have to first bring in two lines from South Broadway, where the Union Station is, and put in a ATS, automatic transfer switch, we would supply two sources to. And then from that automatic transfer switch, we had to give a pad mount transformer, which is 4 by 4 foot wide. And then from that transformer, we would have to then connect these services to all of the buildings, Village Hall, the shelter, and the
Right.
firehouse.
Which we had talked about.
Which for space issues, we couldn't do. There was no way, there's no area to put such,
You're talking about two above-ground units, if I hear you correctly. You're
Yes,
talking about the
correct.
switching unit, you're talking about a local
Yes.
transformer.
yes.
Mhm.
There's another way. We can come down from South Broadway, from the Union Station, underground, fine. And we would have to put in this automatic transfer switch before we can give you, we have to put two transformers underground. But we would have to put this automatic transfer switch, which is 10 feet by 9 feet, somewhere in the area, because you guys are first contingency, which has two power sources. So we would still have to put a pad-mounted piece of equipment somewhere in the area.
Wasn't there a discussion of finding a location beside the rear of Village Hall or something? Or
On the
on the
north
east
side.
side, north or east side?
Still costs too
Where
much
the
dollars.
school was?
Yeah.
Where the school was? I mean,
Well, there's an access driveway right now on the east side of Village Hall.
There's a generator.
yeah, the generators are there and, I forget what it was. But we circled around and there was no area. Because for the spaces that we need, not only does the equipment have to go there, but the doors have to open, has to be operational, has to be for safety for our crew members to actually operate the switches. So not only is it 9 by, whatever, 10 by 9, the doors open another 3 feet on each direction. So you need a lot of space for these things.
But all of these plans would require somebody from Con Edison to actually get here to flip the switches, correct? Or could these be done from some other location? Because I'm really, forgive my ignorance, but it sounds like somebody has to show up here to do it.
So the automatic transfer switch, it'll automatically transfer. If one goes down, it'll automatically flop over to the other source. If the other source goes down, just like your service now, you will go down. And that's just Westchester's first contingency. But in that respect, nobody wants to come out here.
So then why do the doors have to open?
Well, for,
Regular maintenance and
Oh, I
work
see.
on
Okay, but this could be done remotely in the event of some kind of
For
environmental
an
disaster.
outage, yeah,
Okay.
remote, yes. But for actual servicing the facility, it has to be able to have access.
So, again, I'm just trying to go back to, the visual impact would be the new pole. You think that we could replace this pole with the taller pole, but we think you use the same hole?
Yeah.
And then the
there's currently wires that come across, we would just have thicker
I'd like to
wires.
see a picture of what it looks like right now.
Replace the thinner wires with the heavier
How much
duty
is
wires.
it?
There's 2 new poles, I thought you said, and 2
This
replacement poles.
is what it looks like right now.
Right.
2 new
There's
poles?
2 new poles and 2 replacement poles. I
Beautiful,
think.
right?
I think there might be 3 replacements in one, yeah. But we can
Let's
confirm.
verify that.
So is it 3 replacement poles and 1 new pole, or he's counting? I see the fingers.
Nah,
It's 4 replacements and 2 new.
it's 4 replacements.
So one new would be in front of the restaurant, and where would the other new one be?
It would be on Main Street between South, I can't pronounce
No, I'm
it.
better on this
Walk
guy.
out.
And South Cotton.
Oh, okay.
It would be, I have one picture. And that's to isolate any damage.
From the river.
Yeah, to the river. So this will automatically open upon any type of disaster or tree comes down, and you will still be serviced off of the thicker line that's right here. that we would-
Oh, this one's all the way down to South Cotton Street? Yeah. That's all the way down to the bottom of it.
What happens to our plan for our bulb outs on Fletcher Street?
I don't know.
I mean, it's just undoing,
Okay,
6 years of
so
work.
this is-
This
Thanks.
is a better picture to show you.
Yeah.
Currently, this is the village hall, shelter, firehouse, and ambulance corps. We're fed off this transformer for these 3 buildings, and the shelters fed off this transformer. If any of these wires, which is open wire, is the 3-phase wire, should come down, there's no protection up to the station, so the station would automatically open. So everyone in this area will be out of power. In the system or the circuit that we want to put you on, there's nothing fed off of this wire here. So you would basically be the only customer fed off that thicker wire up to this first switch. If something were to happen here, the switch that we want to install right here, which we show here, it would isolate any damage. This would open and this would stay closed in.
But what about here? What about power here? In other words, you still got to, I know there's redundant lines on Broadway, but aren't they both on the same poles?
Yes, it's on the same pole, unfortunately, because
On Broadway.
Fringe network. Oh, yes.
They
So
put a
there's,
second line in, and then they put them on the same poles, if I remember correctly, on the west side of Broadway.
yes, there's 2 aerial cables that come down and then go down and feed the substation.
So the
Substation.
substation is still, the feed into there is something, I mean, it's still anyways, it's very frustrating to me because that's not risk management when you run backup circuits for major substations on the same set of poles. It's just, this isn't, but that's what happened. I know we asked, would you do something like that around the reservoir because we didn't want to have another set of poles put up. So there are times where
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up. It's,
I mean, we try to put it on the same line of poles, on the same pole line. I mean, because we don't want.
You don't want us to add another second set of pole lines either.
No, but I'm wondering how do you increase the reliability of the feed to the station, the substation?
Well, aerial cables are storm resilient, or, not even storm resilient, it's just resilient altogether. The likelihood and the data that we have, the historical data, which we can get for you, it's rare that a circuit that's fed off aerial cable to go down because of a tree, because of a pole.
It just happened a couple of years ago on Broadway, a major tree came down from the 30 South Broadway and took out everything.
No, I'm not saying that it's not possible, I'm saying the likelihood. So if you're saying
So
one
It
out
happened within the
one-
last 3 years, so it's likely. Sorry, I mean,
I understand.
Yeah.
there's a lot of large trees up and down Broadway, so you're talking about, and anyways, I understand theoretically what you're saying, but in actuality, when you look at the physical actuality of what's along Broadway, there's, the risk analysis isn't,
I don't know
doesn't
if
match reality, that's what I'm saying.
Orlando has anything to add to this.
Right there.
Oh, well, you're.
Carlos is the engineering.
Oh, yeah, okay, so you don't have anything to add, but there's a very important project going on, that's this microgrid project that we have been working, I don't know, maybe a year and a half on, and, we're trying to move. It's all about redundancy, it's all about emergency services, it's the same project. Have you been in touch with that project? Have you been working with the
So,
folks that are
The
working on that?
microgrid projects are being done,
With NYSERDA?
yes.
And
Right,
there's a whole
and so
application?
I guess you're using a consultant, I'm not sure what Irvington as who they're working
We
with to
could
do it.
certainly put you in touch
No,
with,
no, that's fine, because we're not the people who are working on doing that.
but it
Well,
has to be
they come to us.
coordinated.
Absolutely, but
Right.
not all of the microgrid projects are gonna go ahead.
That's right, and about
I know, I know, I
30
know.
out of
but
80 are going to
but-
go to the next step.
Next round, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
correct, and then from the 30, they're gonna go down to 10 or something, the numbers are.
Yes, but there's
So-
lots of encouraging things that are
No,
going
and
on, and
so
we've been
that's-
working really
No,
hard on
I'm
that.
sure you have.
And I
you
don't
can
believe
go
that
route
you
if
should
want. That's
not
fine.
sit down with them now to help you discuss what they're working on and what you're
Okay,
suggesting.
well, I have to go back to, just to tell you about the microgrid.
I know
Now,
about the microgrid.
They're competing against each other, and we cannot favor one as opposed to another.
But there's only
Because
one
they're-
that will happen here, if it happens. You're not
I
allowed to
know.
talk to them?
No, we do talk to them.
Okay,
We do. It's
well, I'm
not,
just
it's not
suggesting that-
Carlos's group, I will tell you that, it's not. It's a different group, but we cannot place favoritism to one microgrid as
wait.
opposed to another, because you're all competing for that same pool of money to go ahead.
I mean, the only statement,
So-
and what Connie's trying to get at is, I don't know that talking to them, I hear what you're saying, but, you know, in terms of literal benefit, I don't know if there is any to talk to them, because they're off in their own, you know, hypothetical universe.
Yeah,
of
their
trade.
plan and their, yes.
But from a like kind of 10,000 foot level, the kind of thing that you're doing to add resiliency to this area plays in directly with the microgrid project. Now, the only argument is whether or not, you know, and you've already said it can't happen, but, you know, if we had a blank slate to get the highest level of risk management and be on a path going toward both the microgrid, which is really just additional energy sources to remove the single point of failure of the substation effectively. I mean,
Right,
I mean, it's
exactly.
more than that, but
Yeah,
that's,
no,
that's
it's
kind of
more
what.
than that. You're right, but yes, I know.
And,
We're
and the
done.
second thing is, you know, we have a longer range goal to try to, you know, increase the tourist and business potential of Main Street.
Mhm.
So all of those goals sort of come back, and that's why Connie and I are struggling so mightily about the inability to go underground. I mean, frankly,
You know, I wonder, we have an engineering consultant doing that for some of the other things that are going on. Is it possible to ask Graham's, I mean, this may be like apples and oranges, just to take a look at this proposal, compare it with the microgrid proposal, and see if there's, you know, we can just get that kind of expertise too, because I don't think this is we're not going to be able to resolve this tonight. I mean, certainly, we cannot walk away from something that might really protect our community in the event of an unpredictable disaster. But since most of us sitting here probably do believe in climate change, you know, but is that something that Graham's group could do? No?
I mean,
I don't think it's
I mean, I think at the end, I think at the end of the day,
I think
it's
it's
gonna come down
appropriate
to,
for-
are we okay with the aesthetic changes? You know, what,
not just aesthetic, you know,
but see, I don't think that because if you put in a new, one more pole, that you can't put a bulb out in, you know, so I think that, how much thicker is the new wire versus the old wire is going, if there's no lines on Main Street, I'm gonna have a bigger issue with this, but,
it's going in the wrong direction.
but to me, it's going in the right direction for having, you know, redundancy potentially.
I started out by saying that's the
It's going
goal.
from number 2 to 1, so.
Ballpark even, I don't know.
It's gonna be like double the size.
Okay.
From number 2 to 1 is like double the diameter.
So this is kind of what we have now, and it's gonna be about twice as thick as this.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
Are you for ARB? They're upstairs.
Upstairs?
Yes.
Good luck.
So, I think the biggest thing is whether, for me, is really, knowing that this is going to have to be an interim step, the biggest thing is actually seeing where the facilities are going to be placed exactly, and also to talk about a staging, because it sounds like to me this idea of swapping the pole in mid-wire, I don't know what the right term is, but the one pole on southwest Ferris, is that even possible?
Yes, so I was gonna answer your question. So what we do is, well, like I said, we call it a cutting kit, is where one crane holds the pole up, and then we have to coordinate with Verizon. So
And
Verizon will come out
Cablevision.
there, and Cablevision, and we will all swap, one at a time.
But it'll be done while the crane is holding the other thing up in the air?
Yes, so that's the only thing, it takes a long time to
I
coordinate.
gotta get my camera out.
That takes a long time to coordinate between the three entities, especially since we have double poles with Verizon's on there for months and years. So in order for us to get an appointment for Cablevision and Verizon to come out, it's gonna elongate the whole project altogether. That's why we try to put it to the side, and then,
The only
but if there's
There is a problem because, unlike what Brian is saying, because he didn't actually see the location, it would directly interfere with it affects with safety, visibility.
I think that one in particular.
That one in particular, the rest of them arguable, but that one in particular is one that would prevent us from doing any kind of sight and visibility enhancement, bulb outs, or any kind of things we've talked about for additional safety around the Ferris Street intersection. So that's the one, to me, if we can get a plan, I'm willing to get off my high horse and then go back to saying, look, the redundancy for many situations will be enhanced. I mean, there's still a whole handful of situations which we discussed where there is no additional redundancy effectively. So as long as we're aware of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe you can go back and confirm that the Ferris Street thing can be done, or I guess you're saying it can be done, it's just coordination. But to me, that is, I don't think you want a double pole there for the next several years, because it is a tough spot, but.
Which one's Ferris? One right above the school?
Right here.
Oh, this is Ferris, so I'm not putting Ferris farther up, okay, gotcha.
So the other thing that, about getting rid of the redundant wires, I understand cable and phone and you, but it seems to me that Con Edison could stand on your bully pulpit and do a lot more to help us with getting those 3 or 4 groups coordinated to take all the redundant wires off of Main Street.
We wish
could
we
do
had
it.
that
You
power.
do.
I will tell you, we work a lot of times. I think that your village manager and DPW can attest. We do it in lots of times. It's a frustrating process. It really is.
So I think the answer is going to be, Connie, that we know someone who's actually on the PSC Oversight Committee. Is it Tom still on Avenatti? So we should be asking them to pass some sort of legislative update that actually finds the
After 30
utilities.
days, it's $1,000 a day.
Well, whatever. In other words, we need a legislative solution.
I will tell you that Con Edison's team that works on it has gone back to the PSC and said, it's a very nice plan, but
You gotta go to Tom.
it needs
I
to
think
go
so.
to the
Bang
next
the drum.
step.
Because it's
be
very hard
effective.
to.
Because I think you guys are usually the first ones to move it, and you're waiting for everyone else.
Yeah,
'Cause
so it's
Verizon
been,
doesn't
we said, so we can, the village can look at like who's the next responsible, so they can put their own pressure on, but the reality is, there's been lots of discussion that this plan that they put in this engines was like the first step. It's gotta go to the next step to make it really be
It's got
effective.
to have some teeth.
Yeah, it's gotta have.
And I
some-
think when you go to Tom and say, go look at engines now, and there's ones that are, 160 days over, what are you gonna do about it? It's at least we're getting data now.
I'm going to bring up one other thing from the past, just to point out that I think Con Edison can make more things happen when the pressure is on than when it's kind of business as usual. I'm going to say 3 or 4 years ago, after about 20 years of a gas smell on Main Street down by Continent in front of Haru Hana, there was, for, I'm going to say about 20 years, you could walk by there and everybody would always say, why is there this gas smell? Why is there this gas smell? When the explosion in Harlem happened, it was shortly after that finally Con Edison said, you know what, we can fix this. And it was, I don't know, Greg will remember, it was because the sewer rubbed against something and the gas smell was going, from here to there. But when there was a real pressure point, Con Edison came through and did what seemed to be impossible for about 20 years. So I'm just asking you to go to your higher angels and your higher supervisors and say, why can't we really try to do the right thing for these people? They have been working so hard to make a vibrant Main Street. Yes, they want the safety for their people in a storm, but I think we could do it all. And I just hate to give up and go the wrong direction for something we've worked on so long and so hard, and I would wish you could be our partners in this. So if I have to take a vote tonight to say, do I approve this? I don't. I think you can do better.
So, I mean, I think we're at the point now where we kind of, what it is, so we should probably take a straw poll, I think, right?
Well, I think there's a question, I heard what you said, but I'm not hearing that you feel that can you take this back anywhere? Is there any place to take it back to? Or is there?
So we have been told that the $2 million project is not a viable project for us to do.
Okay, so.
We have. I'm not, we have been directed.
Or ARB?
ARB.
Upstairs, in the,
ARB is upstairs?
yes.
In the lobby.
Oh, okay.
Just, not in the theater.
I know.
Hi, Meg.
So is it, because to understand what we're trying to decide tonight, can you, having heard this eloquent explanation of why this area of Main Street is so important and how much work has gone into trying to change it in a different direction, can you go back and advocate for us? And say, we've talked to the people in the village, they certainly understand and would like to invest in, the safety of the community, obviously, but there's a real concern that's somewhat different from these other communities. Can you do that?
We can ask again.
Okay.
And we are happy to do that.
Okay.
And we can come back with an answer very quickly.
Okay.
I would not hold up high hopes, but
do not keep
because other communities have asked us for a very specific thing. Communities have asked us to put everything underground. I mean, that's the reality.
And how many communities have said yes? Have you had decisions from any communities yet?
Well, we've done work. This is the third year of a 3-year
Oh, I see.
grant.
And so how many?
Oh, yeah.
How many communities have
I
said
have to
yes?
go back and count them up. We've done it in, we've been in Prince, we've been in Dexter.
Who said no?
We've kind of been all over the place.
Okay, and has anybody said no? Has any community refused?
Not that I know of at
Okay.
all. And I think I would know if somebody had said.
That's helpful.
I think the important add, I think this is reasonable for you to ask again, and to write down the term nationally recognized historic district.
Not just a historic building.
Yes, we're actually state and national Irvington Historic District. You can go on the national site and you'll see. And sometimes Con Edison's rules are different in historic districts. And that might change if you didn't bring that earlier to them, I think that's an important bit of information.
I think we need to hear the answer to that, so we know for sure if there's any movement or not. And because I
We
don't
meet
think
again
we're
on
gonna-
Monday.
Do you meet again on Monday? I would just ask you, we will go and we'll ask that question, but I will have to really point out that we would ask for a response pretty quickly after that, because
Understood.
we're really in a time crunch now, because the work has to be done too.
And I just want
Within
to
time
add,
frame.
it is not only about the money. When we first made a design, we weren't focused on the money.
Right.
We were focused on the design. When certain parts started fading, where we want to put something here but it doesn't fit, we were looking for an area around the village where it didn't fit. Then that's when we came back and we designed this, and we got the dollar amount. We do the dollar amount after we design it. We didn't say, all right, we're going to give Irvington $400,000.
Yeah, right.
So even if it's $2 million, we still need a place to put this 9 by 10 foot structure.
What you're saying is you developed what you thought was the best plan for us, not
Well,
the cheapest
yes.
plan for us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, and there still would be the issue, even if they said, okay, try to do it for them, to where this equipment would go.
Okay.
It's,
But I think we're not going to be able as a group to go much further tonight until we have that information from you.
And I think the other thing is we actually have to see some ground truth plans, I would say, you know, actual plans of where the poles are going.
We can do that. We can do that. We can go out on the street with you and, you know, we can come during the day and go on the street with you and actually do that.
Okay, very well.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Because I think
You're gonna get-
the biggest risk is gonna be that one pole on the corner where the only acceptable solution is to replace the existing pole.
Yes, and we do have rules on setting poles. You can't put it next to a driveway or inside of the driveway, of course. We can't put it next to a pedestrian walkway, of course. So we do have our own rules that we have to go by ourselves.
Well, have you seen where that one was positioned?
Oh,
In the middle of the sidewalk, in the middle of the crossing corner of the sidewalk.
Well, there we go with the chicken or the egg. I'm not sure which one.
I'll go first,
Did
then
the
the
dip go
pole or
first or the
the- or the-
pole? I'm not too sure. I wasn't here, so I'm not sure.
Did the dip go first?
Yeah,
Well,
the,
a lot of-
walk.
It dips down the walkways. I don't know that your sidewalks do that on the corners. it
It's
dips
fresh
down.
paint from 3 months ago.
You can see where
No,
you're
no, no, I'm
going.
talking about the existing pole.
Oh, I'm not talking about the existing pole, I'm talking about the location that's proposed for that pole.
Oh, that you saw that, circle.
The
Oh, I
corner
see
of
what
the
you're saying.
southwest.
Okay, gotcha. I thought you were saying the existing pole.
No, I'm not saying, I'm saying we're
look at where
stuck
that
in,
is.
you know.
Okay, so you're gonna go back and ask, and then
We're
I
going
think
out.
we need to plan a field trip where we can all go out and stand on the sidewalk and see exactly what you're talking about. But if you do get the other utilities to take their stuff off these poles, you have to get them to come to my house also.
We would love to have that power. Unfortunately, we don't. So, we understand where it's frustrating. So we will do that. We will have, you know, you have to give us probably a couple of days to make sure that we get to the right people and address
Get it by
that.
the end of the week,
And we'll
yeah.
tell them historic district.
No, we
Yes.
want you not to just tell, we want you to advocate.
Oh, absolutely,
For-
absolutely. That's not an issue. That's not an issue. We can, but, we have to understand we're advocating for a lot of municipalities.
Right, we also have though, like a major streetscape plan that we've invested in, that long-term, 10 to 15-year plan that talks about a lot of infrastructural changes along Main Street, but one of the key ones, and again, I have to put a caveat, because who knows when, or if it could be afforded, is to, you know, get the lines underground. We don't have the luxury of Terrytown to put the lines in the alleyways, because we don't have alleys.
Right.
But you could read that streetscape master plan on our website, or if you can't find it, yeah, I'm sure Larry could direct you to it, and you can read the whole National Parks description of our historic district. Both of those things should be part of the calculus of your plan, in my opinion.
Can I just ask one question? So you're saying that the undergrounding is many years in coming. What's preventing you from actually going and doing that?
The cost.
So it's exactly what we were saying.
Funding.
As a public utility, you have a lot more resources than our little
Listen, you can bury all
municipalities
of
with.
our wires, that would be
Yeah,
easy.
there we go, just do that.
Yeah, that would be
14 million
wonderful.
is the number, so.
You could use us as a
It's
model
only
community.
7 times more than Guernsey.
Yeah, right.
You would get a lot of good publicity in the state of New York for being in the vanguard, supporting historic districts, economic development on the waterfront.
I
being a
understand, and you're a
partner.
great advocate for
I don't know
the
about,
community,
I don't know about the
but-
shareholders, but it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so, you're very welcome. If there's, we'll be back to,
Yes, we'll hear
we'll
from
get
you
back
guys.
to
Larry,
Larry, I
yeah.
guess, and let him know. And again, I just want to underline that we need a really quick response because the project has to be done too within the time
The
frame.
goal will be for Monday, to have a decision one way or
That would
another.
be great. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you,
Thank
Jane. Welcome home.
So, moving on to announcements. First, I'm glad Greg's here tonight because I have gotten nothing but unbelievable feedback on the job the DPW did during their last storm. Jonas was no problem for our guys. Even people who typically complain to me went out of their way to send me emails today saying what a great job you guys did. So we appreciate that. It seemed like it was just another storm for you guys, where I think in other municipalities it was not the case. So great job by everybody. Hopefully everyone's rested up now, and it looks like we're clear for a few days. So great job there.
Thank you.
Another announcement is that we're going to be I'm announcing a public hearing to consider local law amending the zoning code to permit accessory apartments in one-family dwellings, subject to a special permit. And that is for Monday, February 22nd, 2016 at 7 PM in Village Hall. I'll actually make a motion for that if I can get a second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
So this is a procedural thing. Are we going to have a pre-discussion of that at the, before the public hearing is open? Is that how we're going to do that?
Yeah, we can give our opinion before we open it up. So
Well, sometimes we do it the same night, sometimes we discuss it ahead of time and then.
I mean, this law was discussed with the board a ways back, and we have, I guess there's some changes to it, but
There are
not.
changes, I mean, I think since it might be helpful for me to, I mean,
to refresh.
Not tonight.
okay, if you don't want me to, but I mean, you call for the public hearing, I don't know at what point you're gonna explain to the public what the law is, but.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to give the
I'll
summary
just
on
go
it
through
now,
it
yeah.
quickly, I think
That'd
it's
be good.
important, you're announcing the public hearing, people have to know.
Thank you,
what they're
yeah, I
voting
read it this.
on.
Yeah, I got a copy.
Okay, I'll try to go this one quickly.
Sure.
To remind this board and also to advise the public. The law would amend the use regulations for the one-family district and also the business district only for if one-family dwellings in the business district. So in any one-family dwellings throughout the village, you could have an accessory apartment, and it can't be more than one per dwelling unit. It would be subject to a special permit. And there's a new article in the code that tells you what the rules are for accessory apartments. The purposes of the law are to create small rental housing units without increasing building density by utilizing existing housing stock, to provide economic support for resident individuals and families, particularly homeowners who benefit from rental income and those of moderate means for whom there are limited housing options in the village, and encourage the diversity in the population of urban. So that's the point of the law. The requirements for the special permit would be first, that they have to be in a one-family dwelling that otherwise complies with the zoning code. The accessory apartment has to be located in the principal building or in an outbuilding. An outbuilding does not include a garage. Outbuilding is also defined in this law, does not include a garage. The owner of the single-family residence must occupy either the main building or the principal dwelling or the accessory apartment. The accessory apartment can't have more than 2 bedrooms. The residence in which it exists has to have been in existence 5 years before applying for the special permit. There can't be any exterior changes to the building that would change the single-family character of the house in the neighborhood. The accessory apartment shall not adversely affect the character of the neighborhood. In deciding that, the planning board looks at that parking, traffic, noise, congestion, appearance, and any other factor they think might be relevant. And the planning board may refuse to issue a special permit if it finds that the number of approved apartments in the neighborhood, including the proposed one, will adversely affect the character of the neighborhood. The accessory apartment must comply with the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code, including all requirements for a dwelling unit. I want to point out to the board that Ed's brought to our attention that it's not an easy requirement to satisfy, so that people just might not be able to put an apartment in their basement. If it doesn't have the right means of access or enough light or whatever. So of course, the main unit is going to meet the building code requirements for a dwelling unit, but the accessory apartment is going to have to as well. There can't be any violations of the code with the existing building, and then finally, not more than 50 accessory apartment special permits can be in existence at any time, and then the code specifically states that the zoning board can't vary the number of special permits, so it could never be more than 50. The experience with other villages is it doesn't usually get even close to 50, but there is a limit. And then it sets out the procedure for the special permits. It's just, what the application has to be, that there's an inspection by the building inspector, and it's the planning board that issues the special permit, and in issuing the special permit, the planning board could put conditions on it. Then there's a section on expirations and approvals. The accessory apartment permits are good for 3 years, and then they have to be renewed. This gives an opportunity for neighbors to come in if there's any issues in the planning board to decide whether it should be removed, stopped. They'll expire automatically on a change of ownership unless a new person comes in and applies for it. There's penalties provided that you can have it revoked. In addition, a $2,000 fine per month. And then the fees are set for the special permit. The initial special permit would be $250, and the renewal would be $100.
They have to supply, though, the same 18 copies or whatever it is, or how many copies of plans do they have to supply to the vote?
Well, at least on the first go-round, they would have to provide the same number. They may decide on renewal that it's not necessary to go through all that. You may just want to ask the building inspector to, inspect it again and see if there's any complaints by neighbors. But presumably the apartment won't have changed, so.
And what's the notification requirement? Is it like, I don't know if
It'd probably be, whatever the special permit requirement is, which is, I think it's 300 feet. I think everybody within 300 feet has to be notified.
But there is a notification process in place.
Yeah, that's in.
That's in the special permit? Yeah.
It's in the requirements for special permit.
Okay.
Janice, I think they covered it.
You have had this before you, Mark, before, and it had been substantially reworked to reflect the board's comments back then. So this is really the version.
I read it and I thought it looked like a lot of the comments had been taken into account.
Yeah.
And I thought that, some of the complexity had been removed. It seems straightforward.
Yeah.
Seems like it covers all the bases. I was actually quite pleased with the current form of it myself. I thought it was well done. Easy to
I
understand.
agree, yeah. Okay, so we're ready for the public hearing.
Could we add an announcement on here also, about the email that you got earlier today about checks in excess of
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
$50,000? So, so there are 3 checks that you were notified about. One was Caladri Construction, $57,950, which is for this building. Another was Schultz Lincoln Ford, which is for a police vehicle, $27,061, and the last is Woodbrook Gardens, which is a refund, water refund of $30,581. The last item requires some explanation so you understand. There was a new meter put in at Woodbrook Gardens, 140 North Broadway.
Which is where Christina lives.
Yes, this happens to be. There was a mistake between the number of digits that were actually on the new meter and what made it back to the billing system. So it resulted in a bill that was actually 10 times what it should have been. So they received the bill for $30,000 and it should have been $3,000. They paid that bill on the basis that people were speculating that, well, maybe the old one was really running slow, which it could have been because it was very old. But it should not have been that number. So this is their refund. We processed it obviously very quickly. And we were in coordination with the co-op president the whole time on that, so they understand what happened and everyone's satisfied going forward. But it was obviously a mistake on our part, so we just wanted you to know that.
Thank you, Larry, I forgot about that.
Because it was relief for them, right? They weren't using water at that rate.
Yeah, they weren't upset.
Typically, we have any correspondence, and I don't believe there's any public comment. So we'll move to the consent agenda. Anybody have any questions on the consent agenda?
Yeah, I might have missed it in my packet, but what were the approval of budget transfers and modifications? I think I must have skipped that page.
There was only one.
item.
Yeah, it was
It was
police fees. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I don't miss a year. Police fees, it was to replenish the overtime line, the amount of overtime that was attributed to the filming. So it's a increase of police fees, 52,790, increasing police overtime for 40,190, and then putting in a reserve for future retirement costs associated with the overtime, 12,600.
Oh, so that 52,
That was the gross.
52,000 was the overtime bill for the filming?
Yeah, I don't know if that's the final number, but that's,
I think there's gonna be another bill you
it's
mentioned
actually very
last week.
close, but yeah, it's,
This
Is
was
this
billed through,
GOTT?
yes.
this was billed through maybe the week prior, so it's
Yeah.
not maybe last week's billing.
Are they coming back, or did they finish?
We haven't heard from them, so I don't think they are coming back.
What was the answer?
No.
Oh, okay.
Anything else on the consent agenda?
No, I'm all right, thank you. I just,
We didn't see it.
I must have just skipped through it, so.
No worries. Good question. Otherwise, I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next is a public hearing to consider discontinuance of a paper street located at the southern end of Hermit's Road. I will open the public hearing. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. It's open. Marion, do you want to give us the background on this?
Well, there's a piece of, what's the name? Is it Hermit's Road.
Well,
You
it's
know
at-
what, you guys could describe where it is better than I could. I think that's more important, and then I'll say why.
Sure, so, up off of Peterbont Road, adjacent to the village's water tower on Hermit's Road, at the very end of that road, there is and it's actually, the map is attached here, it's kind of small, frankly, but it does show up pretty clearly on here. Do you have the, where you see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, okay, so, Hermit's Road ends to the left on this map, over here. And the paper road that we're talking about is this basically 15-foot wide road or travelway that snakes through the property.
It's mainly through the second, what will become the second lot, right?
Yes.
Right, and right now, this paper road runs through a lot that is the subject of potential litigation against the village. There's been a notice of claim filed against the village. And we think we're very close to resolution of this of the claim by a subdivision of the lot that would involve selling a portion of the lot, about almost 3-acre portion of the lot to the village. And I'll go through the details of that at the next meeting. It's not quite ready yet, but that paper road actually would run through the lot that the village would be buying, so it serves no function to the village. But before we could agree to eliminate that paper road, which is part of this settlement agreement, and to make sure we would eliminate it, so you need to have a public hearing on, and the grounds for eliminating the paper street would be that we have no use for it. And so, the way you find out whether there's any use for it is by having a public hearing, and I guess nobody else thinks there's any use for it. So that's what it would be about. But at the next meeting, we'll be ready, I think, to go through the settlement agreement on this. But before we could even make one of the terms of the settlement agreement that we eliminate the paper streets, we have to find out whether there would be any public opposition to it.
So,
And not just whether there's opposition, it's whether somebody establishes a need for the road.
So this is the same parcel we've been talking about,
Yes.
so that, got it, okay.
was there any adverse reaction or comment from the Open Space Committee about the road?
No, I mean, we discussed the
About
whole
eliminating it.
settlement with them, yeah.
the transaction was discussed with them, but not,
Yeah, I mean,
and this as well, yeah, it was all part of it.
yeah, but it doesn't make any difference because you're gonna have, I mean, you load it, you can put whatever road you want through it,
Right.
at some point you decide you want a road. But it
The feedback
does
from-
not seem to be used yet.
So the feedback from the Open Space Advisory Committee through Jan Blair was positive, so.
I mean, I could see they want a trail, but not necessarily a foot trail I could see, but not just like a potential road.
Sure.
But again, you own the property, so if at some point you wanted a road, you put the road in there.
We will on the property.
Yes.
And there's, I don't think there's gonna be a lot of public comment tonight on this, so, but I'm guessing that there wasn't a big outcry about this, so, I mean, should we close the public
Plus
hearing?
public hearing on it, yeah.
I'll,
And then, you know, I wouldn't yet vote on discontinuing the street
We
because
don't need to.
I don't want, you can't discontinue it yet. You want to
We
make
don't wanna, yeah, we need to.
all
open it first.
the subdivision to go through and, you know, the whole thing.
Yeah,
So
there's
what
no
it would-
resolution in their packet, so.
No, right. The agreement, the agreement that will be presented to you next week is that once the subdivision is approved,
Then we'll discontinue the
then
paper.
we'll discontinue the street. Okay.
Very good,
So are
so,
you looking for the sense of the board or sense of the community? So I guess,
No, we just closed the public hearing at this point, and then,
Yeah, you can say, you know, you can decide next week when you decide on the settlement agreement. Now you know what the public reaction is.
so I'll make a motion to close the public hearing, can I have a second?
second.
All in favor? Okay. Volunteer appointment to the FACE Committee. Resolve to appoint Bill Schwartz as a member of the FACE Committee for a term to expire December 2016. I'll make the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, Bill. Approval of contract 2016-06 with Petra Candace for service related to the New York Prize Microgrid Feasibility Study.
so, this is a consulting contract to follow through with the feasibility study that we had been talking about during the previous discussion about the New York Prize microgrid project. The project itself meets a number of different goals in our environmental action plan, and so we felt that devoting some of that money to the person that's coordinating and really shepherding the entire feasibility study, along with the contractors, of course, made a lot of sense to take some of our sustainability coordinator money, which I use in quotes, and use that towards some of the goals that are in the environmental action plan through this contract, and that's the consulting contract that you see there.
I think that Larry and I, just a minute, Larry and I talked about this a bit because we had a certain amount of money allocated to a salary for a sustainability coordinator, but then we were thinking about the best, bang for the buck, sorry to use a phrase like that, but the best use of the money might have been really targeted, focused. We couldn't get someone in full-time, part-time, whatever. Even if we had someone to come in as a sustainability coordinator, we would have to focus them on one or two specific projects, or else nothing would get done. And so it was kind of like, okay, well, if that's the case, we've got this one specific project that's being shepherded. It had become clear that it was much more of an involved project than anyone thought it was going to be in terms of the time and resource requirement. So it seemed like,
Good use of
Larry
that.
said the rest, it matched a lot of the goals, so it made sense.
It's creative, I like it.
Yes, this was all part of our budget discussion all the way last year.
Yeah, almost
And now
exactly a
we're
year ago.
starting the budget again, so I'm glad that the funds that were put for that very purpose, as Mark described, it would be targeted to the climate action plan. Here is a very important energy-related project with the person who's already been putting time into this. So I support the resolution.
Yes, I do as well.
Resolved to approve contract 2016-06 with Petra Candace for providing all necessary support and coordination with the consulting team engaged to prepare the Phase 1 feasibility analysis
the New York Prize Community Microgrid Project and authorizing the village administrator to execute said agreement subject to the approval of the village attorney. I'll make a motion. Can I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
It's for the record, Larry, just looked at it, it's fine.
There's the approval.
Very-
Authorization to approve change order number 4 for the Irvington Town Hall exterior facade project, 2014-15. May they all be this small.
Yeah. Sorry, just refresh my memory.
Extra bracing.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Cheaper than my kids' braces.
so,
Oh, boy.
Lame dad joke, sorry.
Bad.
so this is the net result of exposing the connections at the front of the building where the columns, the steel that's underneath the columns that you see,
The terracotta.
the terracotta, right, the connections between the steel vertical with the steel horizontal. And it's not much, fortunately, so this is actually a good one. But this is the extra work required to make sure that those connections are as safe and structurally sound as possible after all these years.
Was there
100.
was there rust and decay, or was it just that they were never engineered?
Yeah, there were gaps. There were gaps where things should have been touching, they weren't, so they weren't quite
It
as.
wasn't doing its job.
Yeah, so maybe things had shifted or
Yeah.
expanded or contracted over the years.
So resolved to approve change order number 4 in the amount of $2,280 for extra engineering required for lateral bracing of original columns and additional welding to laterally brace existing columns and to authorize the village administrator to execute said change order. I'll make the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
I guess we're gonna, we're doing pretty good. We haven't found that many.
The gotchas?
Yeah.
So good, yeah.
Next is approval of filming permit for AWP Productions, Inc.
This is a relatively simple operation that should have taken place today. I actually hadn't gotten a report back yet, but that was taking place at Clifton Place, the Dolan residence. And it was only during regular hours for a production called The Dinner. It has a few people in it that some may know.
Some people know.
Yeah, you know these names.
Yeah,
Very good.
that's it, simple.
Any questions? There's no explosions. It's indoors, I believe, for the most part.
It actually is probably wrapped up for the day, but I figured rather than do a special meeting.
Yes.
It's still the same day.
Resolved to approve the filming permit for AWP Productions, Inc. for filming at 2 Clifton Place on January 25th, 2016, from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. for a permit fee of $1,000.
Still there?
Make a motion, can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Reports of boards, standing committees, and officers. Trustee liaison reports.
I don't have anything unique. I just have the constant harangue to say that
We need more volunteers.
need more volunteers, specifically the Environmental Conservation Board, which meets one night a week, typically the last Thursday, and reviews a lot of environmental concerns for site plan approval process, and then is looking for people, and Tree Commission, which meets 2 days a week, usually, I'm going to say the second and fourth, and I could be wrong, the second and fourth Tuesdays. And they obviously review tree permits and generate replanting requirements if there are needed and stuff like that. So both of those committees are looking for eligible volunteers who are looking to help keep our village green and healthy. I don't know what else to say at the moment, so I'm going to pass it on to Christina.
She also says she has nothing.
Christina.
Uh,
Does that mean,
Now we're up to you, Connie.
okay.
Actually,
So I met with the historic, just, you want to read Christina's?
no, I was going to
Okay.
see, let's see this one, because she's, I see Jared, she knows that one. But you can see.
All right,
I'll look it up.
He did.
You
Um,
did, I got it.
I met with the Historic District Committee Wednesday, the 20th. We met with Steve Tilley and his associates, and that is to get the update on the Historic District Guidelines document that Tilly's firm is working on, Stephen Tilly, that is. And a lot of progress is being made, and there's a whole schedule of when things will be finished. I'm happy to pass all those details along to Larry or anybody who would like to see them. Mark and I were at the Third Thursdays this last Thursday. That was the 21st. And I should say in that regard that Sunnyside Federal has actually agreed to pay for the trolley again this year for the Celebrate Irvington Day that we're looking, yes, in June, Father's Day. Take your father on the trolley. I think it's June 19th is Father's Day, right? So you can plan ahead. The theater, met with the Theater Commission last week also. I think that was on Tuesday night on the 19th. What's coming up is the Spelling Bee, everybody's favorite. That's this Friday, yeah. And it often sells out, so.
7 o'clock?
Yep, I think it's
7:30.
7:30, let's see. I'll look at that. But I will say, I also went to a packed house on Friday night of the Clock Tower's Young Teens performance of Guys and Dolls. And it was lovely. So there's a lot going on in the theater. There are other upcoming events. The self-promotion short films is coming up again. It's right before Valentine's Day. So I'll be able to say more about that. It's also, I think that's, some other things going on, but I think that's enough.
All right.
In terms of that one thing, Connie,
Yes.
the Spelling Bee, the Slow Down
Oh, yes,
yes. Folks are going to field a team.
Yep.
And my wife is actually on the team. So I got them some T-shirts. So
Nice.
Oh.
They get extra time as you're slowed down.
I should also say that Slow Down Irvington was the featured topic of the Third Thursdays, and the graphics, I think, are continuing to show on the Inside TV and Inside Sunnyside. I didn't notice today. I don't know if you have, Mark, but they said they were going to leave it up.
They were going to leave the presentation up, the little 2-minute PowerPoint up to cycle through, which I thought was great. Eventually, they're going to have other kinds of things up there as well. They're going to have ads.
Yeah, when you're sitting there, in line, waiting to put it on you.
When you're being slowed down with the tellers.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, I think that's it. I might think of something else, but.
Quickly, the liaison report from the rec department. Winter program registration for all age groups continues this week. There are many great programs with openings still available. Please take advantage of the many great programs being offered. Contact the rec department for additional information. You can also go to the website. The staff is working with residents to prepare for a Dogs on Leash pilot program for Madison Park, which will be held in March and April. Much more about this will be coming out over the next few weeks. Our staff is working with RPAC and a group of residents to create a format for the pilot. Save the date. The FACE Committee is working on plans for a spring festival clam bake in Madison Park on Saturday, May 14th. Music, food, entertainment, games, horseshoe and cornhole tournaments, and a beer and wine garden are expected. Other activities for children will be included. There's also potential for
I think you have to have a different punctuation there. I don't think the beer and wine garden are activities for children.
Other activities for children. Art style. Youth baseball and softball. Registration's ongoing. Leagues for children ages K through 6 are open. Please register early. Sponsors for 2016 youth baseball and softball programs are needed. If you're a business would like to sponsor, please contact Angela Shaw. It's $400 per team. 2016 Adult Softball League. Information is being prepared. If you have a team or would like to form one to participate in one of our adult leagues, please contact Mike Denaro of the Rec Department. Application forms for counselors and staff for the 2016 Irvington Summer Day Camp are now available. Contact Maureen DePauli for additional information. Please remember that the Senior Center and the O'Hara Nature Center are available for rentals for family and social events. Contact Laura Topman for information regarding the Senior Center rentals and Maureen DePauli for O'Hara Nature Center rentals. The Recreation and Parks Advisory Committee will hold its next monthly meeting on Wednesday, February 17th at 7:30 p.m.
in the Senior Citizen Center. RPAC will also join the staff at the Village Board public hearing on the proposed 2016-17 village budget on all areas of the Rec and Parks Department in its charge on Wednesday, February 24th at 7 p.m. Irvington Face Committee will hold its February meeting on Wednesday, February 10th at the Irvington Senior Center at 7:30 p.m. Next meeting of the Community Advisory Board will be held on Tuesday, February 9th at 8 a.m. in the Irvington Senior Center. The next meeting for the IASC CAB Executive Board is scheduled for Tuesday, February 23rd at 8 a.m. in the Senior Center. Irvington Woods Committee will hold their February meeting on Thursday, February 25th at 7 p.m. in the O'Hara Nature Center. The IWC is looking for individuals and groups who are willing to adopt and care for any of the 10 designated gardens located at the grounds of the O'Hara Nature Center. Please contact Joe Archino for additional information. And lastly, the Beautification Committee will be meeting with staff to discuss the future use of Main Street pole decorations for the holiday season. That's it.
I have reports from the water department has been reading water meters, installing radio transmitters on all water meters in the village, maintenance of all water department properties, jetting sewers, replaced a broken water main valve at the intersection of South Broadway and Hamilton, and replaced the booster pump in Riverview Road Pump Station. I had the great pleasure of meeting both Jim Englishby and Greg Nilsson, meeting with them to discuss our liaison work. And when Greg sent his report today, I said, nobody has any question what you've been doing recently. And thank you also from me for the incredible job that you guys did. I'm right on Route 9, so I got to see you all weekend going up and down. Also, you have sent out to everybody the recycling and sanitation schedules. And since I am now liaison, I actually read the whole thing this year, which I don't usually do. I just look for the little squares when my days are up. But for everyone, it really contains a wealth of information on how to recycle particular items, when to do it, when you need to contact the department, when you can just automatically put things out. It's very clearly set forth, so whatever drawer you all put it in, consider taking it out and referring to it from time to time, because there's a lot of good stuff in there. Thanks.
Village Administrator's Report?
Just a quick note, I spent a little time today with a consultant who is helping us finalize bid specifications to change all of our interior lighting as much as possible to LED. So we had a few question marks about the theater, a few question marks down at the library, and also just wanted to get a view of what the office lighting would look like, the typical, like what's in this room, for example, and want to make sure we have the right color temperatures and whatnot.
You mean you could change, you would consider changing these fluorescents out? Any discussion with that in terms of like automated switches, that go off when there's no one in the room?
Not in this phase, no. We just want to get the LED.
So anything else would be a follow-on that.
Yeah, there's other work we can do, we know that.
Yeah. I was just reading, I think I forwarded to you, sorry. I didn't forward to anyone else. There was a building, a campus building where they actually ended up saving over 70% of their electrical energy by going to all LED, but also automated control system that not only had schedules of use and had sensors for activity, but learned over a period of time what the typical usage patterns was. So
they're all,
so 70% savings is pretty colossal for a large facility.
Yeah, that was interesting. That's it.
Village Clerk Treasurer's Report.
Nothing today?
Village Attorney's Report.
Just briefly, on the next board meeting, next Monday, Brightview's going to be back for a work session with the board. They're going to have a revised proposal, revised from what they sent last time, mainly the building proposal. And like I said, Larry and I talked about it. We're going to make it in a work session format. It'll probably be at the end of the meeting, but just so the public knows, they're welcome to be here, but there won't be public participation. It's just enough to present their new scheme.
So I had one other question before we get off, and this is probably something that for Larry or Mary Ann or combined, but we were talking about one of the problems with the snow removal law has been a matter of, I think collecting, creating fine violations or what's, can you explain this better? Because I'm losing the thread of what I was thinking about, but.
Sure.
The idea was to try to ensure that we could have a little bit more stick with the, compliance with the removal. So, sorry, Larry.
Yeah, no, so we've been looking closely at how the law is written relating to removal of snow from sidewalks. And Greg particularly has run into an unanticipated issue about getting contractors on board to assist him with snow removal if people are not compliant. That's the only remedy that's in the law currently. And frankly, the prices he's getting quoted are pretty attractive. So it wouldn't be a deterrent for the person living next to the sidewalk to pay it, even marked up 50%, which is what our law says. The prices just wouldn't be enough of a deterrent, we feel. So maybe in some cases they might be, but for the ordinary situations, it might be pretty convenient to just sit back and wait for the village to do it. So I think there has to
You
be,
need to find how you price Plattman.
but they're unwilling to price. No, but even if there were higher priced, they're unwilling to price themselves out of the market because it's their people who are there. Their trucks are sitting there in front of these people's houses.
Yeah.
So the phone may not ring as much if they're considered the high-priced ones. You know what I mean? It's a weird relationship, but we never actually expected it to happen. So simply put, the law needs to be revised to allow for a different remedy, which would include some sort of a violation that would need to be answerable in court, potentially. I mean, if it came to that.
Bigger headache, in other words.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be another remedy. So it's not going to get solved for this season, because by the time we've adopted it, wouldn't
Hopefully.
probably be April. But we'll be working on it over the summer when it's a little quieter.
Unless it's a one-line change.
Yeah.
Right, we could move it forward.
Well, actually, you have to think a little bit about it. I mean, do you want the fine plus if people don't do it, you can clean up?
I think we want the flexibility for all, but it's.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it.
Public comment. Budget workshop, Department of Public Works. Thanks for sticking around.
I think, right?
I think so, yeah. Six is lucky.
So Greg's here to report that he has almost no changes to his budget, and the ones that he does have are actually down. So, we're done?
Yeah, thanks, Greg.
The overview of the, excuse me, the overview of the budget is that we're basically requesting what we had last year with a few minor modifications.
Greg, excuse me, can I ask you to speak up a little?
I can't hear either. Whoops.
Sorry, is that better?
That's better, yeah. Get right up to it.
Our budget, we are basically asking for the same that we had last year, with a few modifications which are actually lower. Gasoline, for one thing, we don't want to go too much lower because who knows what's going to happen, but streetlights, because of the program that we just...
Greg, could you just humor me and call out the line item as you refer to those? Or do you have them in front of you, or do you just have a short list on a piece of paper?
Gasoline would be 1640.
I'll tell you the page number if we get there. 16, it's page 4. At the upper right-hand corner.
Yeah, I just found that.
4460.
Yeah, so it's almost to the
Gasoline. Yep.
Like I said, we would want to decrease it too deeply because we don't know what's going to happen, but the economic forecast is for oil not to be doing so good for the next year or so.
Wrong business to be in, huh?
Right. Again, streetlights,
Page 8.
5182.
I'm sorry, it's no, page 9. Page 9.
Because we've changed all the streetlights to LEDs, well, it's not, the project is not complete yet, but almost.
Brenda, that
This
number,
is nice, see that here.
that's gotta
Let's
come
take
down.
out 15,000.
Yeah, that, the 59,000 that you see there will go down to 45,000. right? Or-
So you guys found more savings, look at that.
Yeah,
No, that's, but oh, so you do have the actual now, the 39.9 is an actual number? Or no, that's budgeted, that's not
The
billed.
39 is
No,
actual
actual.
spend.
that's actual, but remember,
That was half.
it only just got changed.
So we don't know what that number's gonna be until next budget period, really,
Right.
in terms
I
of
think
true
we're-
savings.
Yeah, but I think we're confident enough, but again, we'll see more actual numbers come in month to month, and then we'll have a better sense, but that 59,000 could go down, we think another 15,000.
And would you do that well, you're not gonna do it until next budget, right? I mean, in terms of, you're gonna know, but by our time we adopt this budget, you're gonna have a better sense of a monthly bill?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they're not 100% done yet, so.
Speaking of that, just as an aside, I noticed, for instance, there's areas like Field Point where they're not done.
Right.
Is that because it's private road?
No, Field Point are those pole-mounted fixtures, right? They're a little unusual, yeah, right.
I don't know, I was just kind of.
Yeah, they're a freestanding pole, all the wires are underground up there.
Okay, so it makes it difficult to change the head or something?
It's just a different fixture, it's not the standard fixture, they have to be priced out separately, and we're dealing with the non-standard fixtures separately from the others. We're also looking at our parks, there's a few other places that have non-standard.
And I noticed, we talked about this before, every once in a while, so you're nearing completion, so you're also getting problem reports, right? I mean, reports of problem heads or problem replacements or
Yeah.
something.
Yes, whatever problems we had have been passed along to the companies.
Because I remember seeing one along Harrison, maybe near a park or something, that it was kind of weird because it's the sodium, and I'm going, I wonder what happened to that one.
Right.
So there's still some of those dangling here and there.
Yeah, there's a mechanism in the contract to go through all this and reconcile it all. And there may be a reason why they couldn't get to a particular head because it's got a bee's nest in it, or, who knows? I mean, not maybe not right now, but.
Is there ever, now just a thought of at some point going around and seeing where heads might need to be added for safety purposes? Because I can tell you, I know that there's a couple places in the village that every time I drive through, I'm going, this really could use something here.
Well, we have had a few requests, and we evaluate each request.
So it's really driven by the neighborhood.
Right, it's driven by requests usually.
Yeah.
And there may be one or two that have not been replaced yet because of Sandy. I'll have to check on that.
You mean the arms came down, or
Yes.
the fixture burned out or something?
Yeah, problem with it like that, right?
Now, one final question. This is just me geeking, and I'm sorry, but when they replaced that head, did they actually replace the light sensor as well? Is that a whole new
Yes.
unit?
Yes.
So we don't have like 50-year-old light sensors in there?
No,
or whatever?
well, it's not a whole new unit, it's a separate sensor, but they did replace them.
It was part of it, yeah. And then we opted for the upgraded heavy-duty sensor because it didn't make sense to have a brand-new fixture that cost you X amount of dollars and then a $15 part cause you a problem.
Yeah.
Make it not function.
And we haven't had any, I mean, it'd be interesting going forward to see what kind of failure rate there is on this stuff, like.
As far as I know, we haven't had any failures yet, but there are a few that they installed that don't work. So I don't consider that a failure.
That's not a failure.
Because they never
That's
done
not
it at all.
But that's one of your problem installs that you have to go back to.
Right. It never worked.
Because the thing about electronics in general is the first 60 days or whatever is where you have your highest failure rate on anything.
That's why I never bought a warranty.
Yeah.
Any other,
Okay.
any other budget?
So we found another $15,000 or $14,000.
So,
One other area we're looking at saving some money is in organics. Since the change in policy and how we pick up leaves, we've saved an enormous amount of money
What you pay to get rid
in
of it?
other areas, and it's also saved money in the dumping fees for the organics. Last leaf season, we were able to track the leaves because Greenberg was open, and we were using both sites differently, but we were able to track the leaves that we picked up. But since, excuse me, Greenberg is closed this year for some repairs, so we weren't able to track this year. The savings aren't as great as last year, the first year, but they're still substantial.
Could you point out the numbers? I mean, I'm looking at.
Page 10?
Yeah, I know, but I just wanted
It's 30 versus 35.
interpretation of.
8160, 428.
Yeah. So it's 35.
Where was
last
it
year.
before the bagging? I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. Where was it before the bagging?
I don't know what the financial numbers were, I just know what the tonnage is.
I mean, 2013, we had actual.
Let me see if I can go back any further, but we had the Sandy episode also.
Before 2013 gets skewed.
Okay, but 32,000.
Yeah.
32,000, and then,
Last year, 25.
so it went down significantly.
Spent that much
And then
today.
current year is 17,600.
And yet we have 30,000 in now for our budget, so is that not
Well, it's down from 35, right?
right? But I see, because our description for 2014, which was was that the first year with bagging?
Last year.
Last year.
Last year, 250.
That's fiscal 2014.
Is it okay?
So it was 25,
But then that had Sandy in it or something, it had storms in there, no?
The first year we actually tracked it was in 2014-15. We did it mid-year in 13, mid-13 we did it. So I do have numbers for 13, then 14 was skewed because of Sandy.
If I remember correctly, it was lumped in with the
Solid waste.
solid waste. And
Yeah.
You broke it out in 2013?
In 2012-13 it was lumped together. 13, I went back, I did the history,
Right, okay.
and then we broke it out in 14-15 for the first time.
So 25K for 14 is the actual, and then we went to, in 2015, we went to,
Well, we're at 17.6 right now.
right, so it seems, I mean, whatever, you never know what's gonna go on. It just seems like we have quite a margin there.
Well, but we still have the spring season for the waste that'll be disposed of then. I mean, it's not the same volume as the fall necessarily, but
Well, it'd be interesting to see, so that, maybe when after you get through the spring, maybe there is, to me, if you have, let's say the number comes out to be, 20,000, 20,000, then you're talking about, you've got considerable, if it comes out to be 27,000, then, whatever.
right. I mean, I think we're on target for probably 25, but, or maybe a little less, but.
Yeah, okay.
So, there's a margin.
Keep that again next year.
There's a margin built in there, yeah.
So, you also must have saved a lot of workers' time, right? I mean, they were off being able to do other stuff.
Exactly, and that's what we did do.
other stuff, yeah.
Yeah, we've been, catch basin cleaning, we got a lot done in the fall. just generally working on the infrastructure, repairing catch basins and keeping them clean. That's one of our big, even just keeping the tops clean is one of our biggest challenges. There's so many of them. So, yes, yeah, the change in policy has helped us immensely.
Because there were aspects of freeing up labor, but it was also like your crews are spending a lot less time picking up leaves, right? I mean, just in general, that cycle gets completed much quicker.
Yeah,
It gets done during a regular workday.
that's right. There's no overtime expended on leaves at all.
And, I've had a number of residents come up and remark about how the compliance with the law has been fabulous for the community. I mean, everyone was expecting like a lot of recidivism or whatever, and it hasn't been that way. It's been a lot of...
It really has been. The residents have just responded to it and done what needs to be done.
And I heard the comments that I'm just echoing to you, so because you may not hear. I don't know if you just get complaints or what, but part of it is just that people have been talking about in some neighborhoods they actually feel it's safe now, because I've heard the two kinds of comments. One of which is the safety of on the road and the piles and what it used to do, and then the second one was about the reduction of potential flood impacts because the stuff isn't washing into the storm drains.
Right.
So it's I guess what I'm saying is that people recognize that by.
I definitely agree, and the piles not being in the roads is
significant.
It's huge.
It's a win-win.
I don't think we got any complaints this fall. I don't remember getting any.
Even Caesar Manfredi likes it.
Yeah.
No, and I think that's been amazing because he has come and said, you know what?
Yep.
He's changed his opinion.
Yeah.
Yes, I got a complaint, but it was part of a whole series of other complaints. It was okay.
All right, moving on.
So speaking of trying to save money, I'll segue into the next discussion, just briefly touch on it for you. Greg has been actively looking at the possibility of purchasing a one-armed bandit, so to speak, a garbage truck that reaches out, grabs the garbage can, dumps it, puts it down with one operator, just a driver. And that can't be done in all areas of the village, but it can be done in probably 2/3 of the village pretty effectively without the cars parking on the road in the outer areas, certainly not in the downtown area. And again, that's continuing the trend of trying to invest in technology, if you want to call this that.
Yeah, sure it is.
Sure. In an effort to become more efficient. So our garbage routes currently take 3 employees, which includes oftentimes 2 vehicles, the garbage truck and then a chase vehicle.
The satellite truck?
The satellite truck,
Yep.
because they're workers in most cases because of safety rules are not allowed to ride on the back of the truck when the truck travels longer than a certain distance or goes higher than a certain speed. So in order to transport the whole crew, we have 2 vehicles out there, which is not awful wasteful. But that's the way it is. So this would eliminate that completely in those areas. And so, it's something that Greg's looking at. He can tell you, what we've done to research it, but that's just a little preview, not for this year's budget. But soon, I think.
That would be capital budget?
It would be, yeah. But
except for personal.
Yeah, exactly. But the operating impacts wouldn't touch on this year's budget because it would be still many months off until this is implemented because there's still more research to do and the routes would have to be all reworked and potentially. And so there's a few intricacies with it.
Is there any way to, Yeah, wow. How do you actually run a trial? I mean, you just try to take one route, but you're in for the truck at that point, right?
Or one.
Greenberg started this
Yeah.
2 years ago, I
Yeah.
believe.
That's right.
And we've been observing the Greenberg truck in action, and it's very impressive. And from what I understand, Greenberg is buying more trucks because it is a very successful program. Tarrytown has implemented a different type of program. Excuse me, they retrofitted some of their garbage trucks, I'm not sure how many. And the truck will lift a 96-gallon garbage can. But the problem there is you still need the 3 people on the truck, the driver and 2 laborers on the back to bring the cans to the truck, to have the truck lift them. But the good news there is, because one of the problems that we saw with the Greenberg one-armed bandit is our village would only buy 1 truck, because they're like $300,000. Excuse me. So what do you do for maintenance? What do you do for breakdowns? You can't expect guys to go out and lift up 96-gallon garbage cans.
You all know the size of what those are. Those are the big ones that you roll. They're like big push carts, but they roll.
The one you put the bodies in.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
But you don't lift them up.
Well, our standard can that we recommend is 32 gallons, so this is actually 3
Quite
times
big.
the size. So anyway, when we started to observe Tarrytown's pilot operation, we noticed that for, I believe it was $10,000 to retrofit an existing garbage truck to lift the 96-gallon can. He said, well, there's the answer to our problem. When our future one-armed bandit needs maintenance or there's a breakdown, the garbage can still be picked up with the other truck. We don't have to go rent a truck or, be running around chasing a truck somewhere. So we feel with a little more research and a plan, we can come to you in the near future and save a lot of money on this.
Now, 2 questions come to mind on this. Mr. Alternate energy yet? None of these trucks yet are like
They're not powerful enough yet to do alternate energy.
the compressed gas or something like that.
Yeah, but we don't have the filling.
Yeah, we don't have this.
That's our problem.
And Greenberg doesn't either.
No, well, but
Or liquid.
we're too small to have our own.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking the next level up if there's. The other question I had is, what about, we have a lot of streets that are not even, that have quite a grade on them. So how does that impact the ability for these things to get picked up?
The one-armed bandit that we observed didn't have any problem on grades like that. I don't think we have any grades that are prohibitive. And if there were, the retrofitted garbage truck could pick up any cans that posed a problem, but I don't anticipate a problem like that, like you're describing.
I just was wondering
Because of
we-
grades.
Okay.
So,
Cool.
I had a question too.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm very innovative and good thinking on your part, Greg. Observation, savings of personnel would obviously be, important and efficient. But so 96, I'm just trying to think, besides the co-ops and the big properties, who needs such a big garbage can?
Okay, it doesn't have to be 96. It could be 64. They do make different sizes.
But let's say, you just said the current one is 30,
32.
yeah, 32.
That's the one we recommend.
Yeah,
But I mean, we go to stops, they put out 3, 4, 5 garbage cans, so.
Okay, I'm just thinking, we barely use our 32, have about a quarter of it used, so I guess we're odd guy out, but I didn't know there was such a
Well, it opens
need.
the door to less pickups during the week.
Oh, so you would have,
I didn't say we would do it.
You would do that,
It
but
opens, it certainly leaves that possibility out there. I don't think that's,
And how would we,
interesting.
It also opens the door to pick up recycling in the future, this way. Recycling is, next to snow, that's probably our biggest challenge.
Yeah,
Because we do it all on a Wednesday. But if you had that one on, if the county ever goes to single stream, that would help us immensely.
right, so if
All together.
the whole mixture of all the recycling,
Right.
paper, everything, were all together, and it would be, picked up with the same, in a different kind of container, not the rectangular ones.
no, it could be the same type of container. I have exactly this where I live, and
Yeah,
I have a garbage one that's slightly bigger, and I have the other one that's recycling that's a little smaller, but it's blue.
they have a
They're
pickup,
single stream now,
they have a
one-arm bandit.
one-arm man, I like that. What would we, if this came in, so residents would be buying new trash cans?
The way they did it in Greenberg and Tarrytown is the municipality paid for the new cans.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure going into the future when you need to replace them, what the policy's gonna be, but I know that they had a company come in, they actually delivered them right to the house and everything.
So that's all part of the conversion budget,
Right.
because otherwise.
But again, this has a very fast payback.
We'll put all that together. We don't have, that's not for analysis tonight. We just want
Just
to.
you're planting seed.
Yeah.
That's great. I think that's really a great thing.
It's a great, it's a great initiative. I wasn't ever sure with our kind of unique set of streets and different types of streets, even for a small municipality, it's.
You couldn't do it in the downtown area, there's no doubt. I mean, you can't reach between cars to pick up
Right.
containers, so it really does work in the.
You have to have a car lifter first.
there's a good idea.
So but it does work fine on the more rural streets, if you will, but the streets that don't have street parking, that's the key.
The other thing, I mean, the only other thing I've been thinking about a lot is, we've been talking about a lot of slowdown Irvington, and part of the issue is always the morning congestion on Main Street, and I don't know how we get around that. I mean, a lot of times it's school bus congestion, sometimes it's, garbage truck congestion, and what happens is that there's always ends up with a clot of sometimes several blocks of cars behind whatever vehicle it is that's congesting at that moment. So I know you've probably thought about this a lot, talked about it, and I know there's probably issues in terms of contract or whatever, but it seems, how do we address trying to move some of that garbage pickup off the morning peak along Main Street? Is there any way to address that at all? Or, do you know what I'm trying to get at? Because there's that
Even if
window.
we did that, the complaints that I get on my phone, message-wise, and when people actually, I speak to them, people are complaining that Main Street is congested between 7 and 8. Then I get a call, they were mad because it was congested between 11 and 12. Then I'll get a call between 9 and 10.
Because
So-
of your garbage trucks, or just because it's congested?
Well, sometimes it's a garbage truck, sometimes it's a school bus, sometimes but it's all different times of day that this happens. Does it happen in the morning? Yes, that's when school is in, but in answer to your question, what we do now is we get our garbage picked up as early as we can, and we take those men and they go out and they get reassigned. And if you start to encourage them to pick up the garbage later in the day, there's going to be less extra work getting done.
Well, how about earlier in the day, is there a limit
Well,
as to
I'm
when?
you have a guy come in and start something and go pick up garbage and then go back.
No, like, come in,
Before 7.
like, try to clear Main Street by.
Well, that's one of the problems we have. Anything put out for pickup has to be out by 7 o'clock.
So you really can't come by sooner unless the regulation changes.
You could change.
Well, we can, we do, but if they put it out before 7, we have to go back. So, it kind of defeats the purpose of what you're saying. And, there's a lot of business owners that just don't get here on time. They're not here for 7 o'clock. It's not a problem as far as we're concerned. And I understand the perspective that you're looking at it from. But to try to pick it up later in the day wouldn't work. And if you pick it up earlier in the day, you have to go back anyway.
It's a hard one.
Okay.
Well, I got to give our crew a lot of credit because, as you know, we're down 10 people from where we used to be. There have been some policy changes that went along with that, but the crew has really responded, and it's because of them that the DPW functions as well as it does. And I just want to give them the credit where the credit is due, because they're the guys that are out there doing the work, so.
I would say it more than functions, I'd say it thrives with 10 less people, to be honest. Again, it's almost every piece of feedback I get in the DPW is unbelievably positive, from the attitude to talking to people. I think the only thing ever I've heard is not stopping fully at stop signs, Mark, but
I've heard that one, so.
But I think that it's unbelievable. I think people take great pride in our DPW. So congrats on that. And thank you also for another budget that's lower than last year's budget. Makes our job easier at budget time, so.
But I have to agree with you, Brian. I think I've heard very, again, except for some stop sign issues, there's very little, no complaint, only praise, especially with how well you guys dealt with the snow situation this last storm.
And a lot of it's typically glowing. It's really, really, people are proud of everything because of the DPW, which I don't think you find that in a lot of places.
So are there any other lines in the budget to pay attention to, higher or lower, or?
No, the rest are the same.
Solid waste went up.
Yeah, I just saw 88 to 90.
Well, that was 5,000 that we actually increased. We took the savings in organic and moved it because our tipping fees are going up. And you can see from the past years, expenses were about 94,000 in prior years. So we took the savings and transferred it to the other line.
And I think we're doing well in salt so far this year.
So far, so good. At one point, we were worried about making our quota.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, exactly. Thank goodness.
we'll be
Never
fine
been a
with the
problem before.
quota.
Yeah, I'm happy to pay for nothing.
If that's the last storm, I'll be very happy.
I don't see nothing on the horizon on this. I'm sorry.
But no, I was just, I'm fine. So that's,
Well, very good. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Okay, Larry. It's all yours, chief.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night.
Rest up.
That's what we're gonna do, right to bed.
Good evening.
All right, chief.
How you doing?
Well, thanks, Sal.
Hang in there, especially after the storm, which was Thank God not too
Yeah.
hectic for us anyway.
So, highlights on the budget that you want to, it doesn't look like a lot's changing.
No, not much. Not real.
That's the theme that we have going here. But that is a little bit about, the instructions that we had with the other departments. Just to try to keep services the same and, keep costs the same, up or down a little, but exactly. I don't know,
Well, it appears higher than it really is. I want to
Yeah,
just mention
it looks like it's
something.
$1,000 difference, but it's 2.46%.
No, is that the longevity, the expenses for longevity, and it's on the first page, 3120, 133, and unused sick time, that was, prior, that was in one line with also other employees. So just for sake of illustrating where the expenses really belong, it's in the police department, but it's just a shifting of where it was before. So it's not really an increase to the total budget, it's just being represented in the police department and not in the other area of general employees. So that comes to 60,000. So it's really not an increase to the budget, it's just being moved here from general expenses. I wanted to point that out. And then in salaries, it was just a step increase for the police officers. Otherwise, it was the same except for the one item which we want to address it with the.
right, and the step increase is a contractual item, it's in their current contract. Other than that, I think,
There's one item with the policy manual.
Yeah, that's something that we're looking to take on. There is a company that will basically keep your manual up to date periodically and standard operating procedures, any law changes, anything that we deem would be physically responsible for us as far as working conditions and rules and regulations to follow. It's something that we could utilize if we start heading back towards getting accredited again as a manual that would be constantly updated by an outside source. We don't have the manpower to constantly, update, and myself and another sergeant basically does it as these things come in and as the laws change and how we need to proceed. So and there's always been a ladder coming down, and again, maintaining it is difficult at times. So this would be a good addition for us to utilize and probably save us money and man hours too at the same time, along with the accreditation process, should we go back through that again.
so the history, if maybe you could just briefly touch on what we were as an accredited agency going back probably 20 years ago.
Yeah, back in I think it was 91, in the early part of the 90s, we became accredited then. And that's a long process. It took almost a year to get there, and then once we got there, we were accredited for 4 or 5 years. We tried to maintain it, and then we got into the budget crunch, and again, the physical restraints at that time, we no longer could keep up with the accreditation process. It's basically a full-time position for one officer to maintain and constantly upgrade the records, maintain records, and again, new policies, structures, of renewal of new policies and new structures that would come in would have to be constantly updated. So it was basically a full-time job, and we didn't have the manpower to do it, so we basically fell off the radar on that.
That predates your tenure as
Right.
chief, and this goes back to probably the early 2000s.
I believe Chief Tonight was chief at that point. And so now, with things are starting to get better physically, hopefully for us, we'd like to get back into that process mode. This would be an asset, and like I said, could be also a savings for us down the road as we try to reapproach accreditation.
So, the way I look at it is the adjusted 2015 to the requested 2016 is $1,000 more, $1,200 more. The original budget is, it's 80,000 more, but from the adjusted 2015 budget, the looks like it's about $1,000 increase, so. That's pretty-
Adjusted is bringing over purchase orders, so it's not really just,
So so you have to look at the original budget.
really to the original budget,
Well,
correct?
no, then the adjusted includes, the significant number in the adjusted is the added overtime
Right.
that has been added to that budget for things like, well,
Building, but it hasn't-
that's not reflected in there yet, but it's things like that.
Correct.
You know, contracted out overtime that we make adjustments for, or maybe even grant money that we receive to be
Right.
reimbursed for overtime that we incur. So it is a fair comparison to look at the original 2015 budget column compared to the requested. And there is what looks to be a significant jump there, but if you subtract
Yeah,
from
it's
the
because
requested column, if you subtract the
60,000.
60,000 that Brenda talked
Right.
about, that brings you down to just a hair over 3,100,000 compared to 3,088,000 last year. It's, you know,
It's like personal service, overtime alone is $40,000 from the original to the adjusted.
Yeah, that's what I mean, so it's not, as long as you understand what those changes are, there's not a reason to even look at the adjusted, frankly. You know, if you want to see a real comparison, budget to budget, it's adopted last year to where we are looking to adopt this upcoming year, this requested column. And like I said, the requested column is just skewed by that 60,000 that was brought over. That's just an allocation from another line item elsewhere in the budget. So when we cover that section of the budget,
It'll be down.
it'll be down 60,000, correct?
So this is literally almost exactly unchanged.
Yeah, just the 10,000.
$10,000, yeah.
So it does look like there's
There's a couple reductions in speedometer.
Yeah, some of the
You squeeze those guys who certify the
some of the
speedometers.
maintenance contracts, right?
So I had a question. We'd been talking, again, this is from the perspective of the traffic calming committee, slow down urge and whatever. There had been discussion about, Larry, which I know we introduced to you just a week ago, maybe less than that, about trying to get some additional crosswalk safety personnel hours. So that's not, what line item would that be under? That's not overtime, that's something else, right?
No, that would be in that page 1, 3120, 123, that's in the labor. Part-time, 3120, 123 labor, which is part-time, that's what that is.
So we don't know yet what that number might be if we were,
Yeah, no, that's not in here as a proposal yet.
do we know what any of those particular, for instance, what would, I'm trying to think of how to say this, the cost of, for instance, the guard at Main Street School, Heritage Hill, that crossing guard.
We essentially have,
Two, well, actually, 3 school crossing guards, one at Heritage, one at the old crossing on Broadway by the church, and at Main Broadway, and then one rotates down to Main Street in the afternoon.
well, yeah, but that's an extra crossing, so it was $10,000 a crossing, basically.
That's, I guess, what I'm trying to get at.
$10,000 a crossing.
And it's school hours. So that's like considered 2 hours a day, or 4 or 3 hours a day?
It's 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Oh, okay, 4 hours a day, so, okay. So that's the scope of it. So, I mean, this is the kind of thing that we'd want to try to talk about an adjustment like that before we finalize the budget, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
It's just too soon from last week.
Yep.
So you're saying that the part where that shows up is the line called labor?
Yeah, that's our,
Okay, so that's where the crossing guards are.
yes.
And you say there are 3, and,
There's actually 4 separate crossings 2 times a day, so that's the 40,000, roughly
right, okay,
40,000.
so 41,728.
Right. So an added crossing, I think, just as, we're all talking just rough numbers here, an added crossing
It's about 10K.
is about $10,000. So if you decided, for example, to take the recommendation of the traffic committee, which is to put a guard at the bottom of Main Street by the train station, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, or evening, or whatever the hours are, it's $10,000, roughly.
But would we be hearing about that, like the effectiveness of that, or the analysis of what that would do, or how well it might work, or is that part of this process?
Well, that's a recommendation from the committee, so.
The traffic committee, yeah. Okay.
That was in the recommendation, right? But I don't know what the next step is. We did a review with Larry of trying to prioritize the recommendations and get a sense of what was nearer term, what was further term, what was expensive, what was less expensive, the kind of thing.
Yes.
I don't know what comes out of that. I had to leave early. Was someone tasked to note that up, or?
Well, I mean, I got the parameters of, I'm sorry, no.
Oh,
what the whole discussion was?
No, I mean, take the results of that and actually actualize the things that appeared to be doable, short-term, not too expensive, that kind of thing.
I mean, I have notes on there of things I know I have to do, but
yeah, okay.
I don't think one of them was produce a prioritized list necessarily. I'm sure I will for my own purposes.
But I guess, it's getting late, and I guess we don't, there's not like we know all of what we might need to know on that, or maybe I just don't remember, but the location of an additional crossing guard and the place where such a person might make the most difference. You're saying that the committee recommended in front of the train station.
Well, I think it recommended two locations, one down at the train station and one further up, Main Street.
Yeah.
But in our discussions, if I remember correctly, we really focused, thinking that if two was too many, then the one that was the most critical would probably be the one that would help deal with some of the issues down, the public safety issues down at the train station.
All right, are there any other lines in here that we should be looking at particularly? In the whole police budget?
So the entire budget, when you discount the items that were transferred from another, line item to longevity, the increase is 15,842. So it's comprised primarily of the request to utilize a policy, manual policy, our company, professional services, a step increase that's mandated by the contract, and then a few shifts in their maintenance agreements.
There's nothing, so whatever contractual salary increases or nowhere here?
We should explain as a general rule here, both union contracts are expired, so the police and the CSEA, which covers most of DPW and Parks and Rec, those contracts are expired. So as a result, any assumed salary increases are not reflected out in the individual line items. They are lumped into a contingency line item, and Brenda and I have made certain assumptions about the levels of those that we can share with you in executive session. So, because they affect negotiations. So, here it looks like it's either flat or close to flat. In this case, the only increase happens to be a particular individual who happens to be going from one step to another, but that's required by the contract, not a raise. It's a required step. Other than that, it looks flat here, but it's provided for elsewhere.
Thank you.
And that same applies to the CSEA, DPW, all of what you just saw in DPW is in the same situation.
If once a contract is settled, then that money will be transferred into those lines.
Right.
Okay.
Or not. Maybe you won't set any money aside. Who knows? But anyway, that's up to you, but it'll be discussed in executive session.
And so is that contingency in here now or not?
Yes.
It's in the
Yes,
budget.
reflected in the budget, yes. Not in here, you won't see it here.
Oh, it's just
Not
a,
in the
it's just a big
contingency
kitty
separate.
somewhere out?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Contingency has many different
Yeah,
components.
yeah.
All of which you will know about, and some of which will be made available to the
But it's
public.
factored into the overall budget.
Right, okay, I got it.
Yeah, no, this is not added, that won't be added later or anything like that. We've already factored that into the calculations that you heard at the last meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. That's it, right?
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Maybe we could do another department tonight.
Yeah, who's around? Is Joe still around?
Yeah. We could probably get
The next department we'll be hearing from is the library.
Monday?
Not Monday. Not Monday, no, the following Wednesday,
yeah, right.
the 10th, I believe.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank you.
night.
Take care, Chief.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Review of action items?
Yeah. I think I only had one item.
One more than I had, so.
Yeah, it was discussed with Tom Ebenanti about the legislation related to double tolls.
Yes, it's a good idea.
Obviously, there were action items that came out of the whole conversation with Con Ed. and you know what those are.
Yes, those are in there, yeah, not really.
And they're in
They're
there.
in there, yeah.
So, that's it.
Okay,
Excellent. I will make a motion to adjourn then.
second.
All in favor?
All right.
Opposed? Carried.